All right, I'm going live.
I love if you're wearing a tie, though.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Tie Day Friday. We have the yellow tie on today because Sunday's Mother's Day, so happy early Mother's Day to all of you out there. When I was growing up, my mom's favorite color was yellow, so this is her tie today. So we are super excited to have you with us this morning. We have an awesome schedule lined up for you today, starting with Blended Learning in Action Part 1 and 2. We have the whole JCPS Digital Innovation team on with us right now. It is going to be awesome. Then we move into a session from Sandra Hogue about It's Write All About It, Writing to Accelerate Learning. We have Teaching Guided Reading Remotely. And then we end with Innovative Digital Leadership Strategy with 3 more principles and Harmonizing ELA and Creativity. So we are incredibly excited, and I'm going to turn it over to our team lead, Heather Worrell, to take us away.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. I am so excited to be here with the entire digital innovation team. Everybody unmute and say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Hey, guys. Good morning.
Hello. Morning. This is the Dream Team, and I am so privileged to get to work with these remarkable leaders each and every day. And today, we are super excited to talk a little bit about blended learning. We, as a team, have been engaged in some blended learning book studies since the beginning of the year. These books are by Catlin Tucker. Do you want to go ahead and show the first book, Matt, that we're going to be talking about
Yes, absolutely.
today?
Here we go.
So Catlin Tucker is a great author and teacher, and she wrote 3 books, and we're getting ready to start reading her 3rd book as a team, if we ever are allowed back in Camp Edwards and can get to the books. But the first book that we started was her book, Blended Learning in Action. And I can't see it. Does Matt have it up? There it is. Okay, I see it now. Blended Learning in Action. We started reading this book as a team and really digging into it chapter by chapter at the start of this school year. And we had a lot of takeaways and insights. And the first thing that we want to talk about, and what we're going to do as a team is break it down chapter by chapter. And each one of my teammates is going to lead a chapter. And we hope that this book will help shape your thinking and help prepare you and give you good ideas when we think about creating these blended learning environments moving into the next school year. So when we're finally allowed to be with our kids again in the brick and mortar building, we're hoping that you'll get some takeaways from this book study that we conducted to create those blended learning environments. So thanks for being here with us today. But we can't talk about blended learning until we first talk about the SAMR model. So Matt, if you would go to the next slide for our viewers, we want to talk about the SAMR model. And I just saw a really great tweet go out by Brian Morrison, and he said a digital worksheet is still a worksheet. And we totally agree with that. You know, a lot of people start in substitution phase, and that sometimes is a great place to start and get your feet wet with technology, but eventually we want you to move beyond just a digital worksheet. So great tweet from Brian, and I really encourage all of you viewers and our school digital innovation leaders and STCs and awesome teachers out there, I want you to join us in this blended learning conversation, because now's the time for us to really come together and start talking about the power of integrating technology effectively into the classroom to provide innovative instructional experiences for kids. So this is an awesome SAMR model logo that our one and only Elaine Abernathy has created. And along with this logo, she also created a short little video that we'd like to show you to kick off our blended learning book study. Matt, can you take us to that video at this time?
I sure can. All right, here we go.
Every day, our teachers are designing activities to target higher order thinking skills and in order to engage students in rich learning experiences. Integrating this technology adds a whole new level to teaching and learning. And how can technology transform our learning design? Well, there's a Dr. Ruben Pentanora who designed a way for teachers to evaluate incorporating their technology into instructional practice. And this is the SAMR model, and you can use it to reflect how you are integrating technology into its active substitution, augmentation, modification, or redefinition. We like to look at this model like moving up a ladder. And we're trying to shift use of technology from enhancing learning to using it to transform our learning. So how can we teach above the line with no talks? Let's take a look at the example of number talks in the classroom and how it evolves through the lens of SAMR. So in substitution, technology acts as a direct tool to substitute with no real functional change to the task. This would be students just writing it down on a Google Doc. So they're substituting a handwritten problem for a typed problem. Really, the task is the same, with no real change in student engagement. In augmentation, our technology still substitutes, but with some functional improvement. What if we had students take that number talk and enhance it with productivity by being able to revisit their number talk?
My name's Ava, and my strategy is making tens. So I used 5 plus 5 equals 10.
In modification, technology should allow for significant task redesign. So let's take that same number talk and have our students use Jamboard to write their number talk. Then they can share these number talks with their peers and provide real-time feedback.
So I knew 3 plus 6 would actually equal 9. Then I can need to erase 10 and make into a 9. Then erase the 20 into 19. I need to erase this. Make into 19. 19 plus 4 equals 23.
Here, technology has significantly modified the original task by introducing the benefits of student collaboration. Now, at the top stage of the SAMR model is redefinition. When we incorporate technology, it allows for the creation of an entirely new task that was previously inconceivable. What if students transformed their number talk into a multimedia production? After creating several, they could edit clips and add them together to have a number talk evolution, provide feedback from their progression of number talks throughout the year. So in this case, technology redefines the story of the number talk. It includes media creation, critical thinking, collaboration, and communication.
My name is Aubrey, and my
I ended the video. Did I let it go too far? I'm not sure.
Technology redefines the story of the... They can always check that video out. It's on our channel.
Okay, sorry.
We'll have the link at the bottom of this video.
I wasn't sure how much longer that went past the backpack skills, so I wasn't sure.
Did I let it go too far? I'm not sure.
Okay, so I think you got Elaine, a lot of love in the chat about the video, and I told everyone that we are going to break that piece of the SAMR model. That's actually in a much longer video where you and Andrea from the math team, you guys came together and did an artifact design studio on number talks, and you incorporated that video. So we're going to take that little segment out and create an on-demand episode, and we'll work to share that with all of our STILs and STC leaders and also post it on the channel real soon. But the SAMR model is a key piece as we talk about blended learning strategy. So we wanted to make sure to have a discussion about that. Digital innovation team, anyone want to point out anything in particular about the SAMR model that our teachers should be aware of?
I think one thing to be aware of is a lot of people see the SAMR and they really want to get to that R with the redefinition, but it's important to understand that you cannot always be in redefinition. You should never be expected to be there. Substitution is always acceptable. Augmentation, we like to think of it a little bit like a pool, and you have your shallow end and your deep end. Nobody wants to go to the deep end and stay there and try to tread water all the time. So you want to be able to go back and forth through that pool.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what I was that analogy with the pool is so important, that you're going to be back and forth all the time there. depending on what it is that you're trying to have kids do.
That's right. So that pool analogy, and a lot of teachers start in the shallow end, right? They start with substitution, but we don't necessarily always want to stay there. We do want to try to swim out a little bit deeper and try to integrate technology in the upper levels of the SAMR model from time to time as well. So very good point. Okay, so let's move on, Matt. If you would go back to our blended learning in action slides and show those to our viewers. Jenny Stith, can you think of the SAMR model like blooms, the higher, the more rigorous? Absolutely, Jenny. I think that's the exact same concept. Very good point. Chelsea says, you will move fluidly through SAMR when teaching. Exactly, Chelsea. And I'm excited. I know Chelsea is going to be helping to lead the JCPS Dig In chat on Monday with some other middle school leaders. So Chelsea, feel free to talk a little bit more about your experiences out there at Newburgh teaching with the SAMR model. Okay, so we're going to go through chapter by chapter, and each one of the digital innovation leaders is going to take a chapter from blended learning in action. And for those of you who haven't read it, this is your opportunity to get a quick blink on each chapter and learn the major concepts in the book quickly without actually having to read the book. If you'd like to read the book, your digital innovation leader has a copy, and I'm sure once things are back to normal, they'd love to let you borrow it. So we will start with chapter 1. Who's going to take it away with this chapter?
Oh, that would be me. I had chapter 1, which was very short and sweet and a nice introduction to get us started into our study of the book. So basically the concepts that are on my slide are the things that were outlined in that chapter. First of all, Catlin and the other authors said that they don't really want to give a definition or redefine blended learning. But for those people who have never been introduced to blended learning is just a combination of online learning with the traditional brick and mortar education that students are getting when they are in school. So they are really not trying to define that for you, but give some scalable classroom practices that teachers can take into their own teaching. So the first one would be personalization, which is giving students opportunities that are personalized to their own preferences, things that they are interested in doing. And, when we first started out with doing this study, this was just things that we were learning about in theory. Some of us had experiences with blended learning. I know when I was in the classroom or in the library, I tried a little bit of blended learning. But now with our NTI experiences, we're really seeing a lot of these practices come into play. And personalization is one of those things that I am seeing a lot of people try to do for their students because they're trying to draw them in and keep them interested while we're in this NTI situation. So personalization is the first practice that is mentioned in the book. The second would be agency, which allows kids to have some decision making in their education, really giving some of that power to students instead of the teacher having all the power in their learning, giving students an authentic audience for their work that they're doing. Again, I'm seeing some of that when I'm looking at things that students are creating for their choice boards, or even like when students are keeping those journals now about their own personal experience during this pandemic. That's an authentic audience. They're writing to people that may read that in the future. Connectivity, so allowing students to be connected to their peers and connected to the world around them. And then creativity. Again, these are, something else that I'm seeing a lot of things, a lot of people being able to utilize now that we are having to engage students in things that they weren't really doing in the classroom, but really trying to engage them and keep them active in their learning. So that creativity is just allowing them to demonstrate their learning how they would like to demonstrate it in creative ways. So moving on from those scalable practices that we want to give teachers or allow students to have in their education, the next thing that the book talks about is that culture is really key when you are trying to implement a blended learning strategy. So everyone has to be motivated in order for blended learning to work. It can't just be one person or two people within the building or a few schools within a district that are trying to implement this. It has to be a culture of blended learning, and everyone has to be on board. I don't want to keep tying it back to our NTI strategies, but I really see that is giving a lot of people the motivation to learn these technology tools so that they are being able to connect with their students. And so that motivation is giving us a ramp into being able to do these blended learning practices when we are allowed to go back to school. And hopefully it stays around when we are allowed to go back to school in the fall. So speaking of motivation, every stakeholder has a role in scaling this blended learning strategy, from the district leadership down to parents. And so district leadership, that's the top superintendents, assistant supes, they have to lead this vision for their districts. School leaderships, such as principals, assistant principals, they have to take their school vision and align it with the district vision. And then teachers have to have that buy-in and align both the district vision with the school vision and their own classroom vision. So it all has to be aligned and everyone has to be on the same page. And then from there, the IT team, such as the innovation team or over on the integration side, have to ensure that the technology infrastructure works, and our innovation team will be there to help students and teachers learn the practices together. So that is a key component as well, because if the technology doesn't work, then teachers will be less reliant on it and less willing to be able to use it. And then students have to take ownership of their learning, and parents are also encouraged to support students in their learning. And again, with this NTI experience, we're having a lot of students and parents, work together in partnership with the parents and the principals to continue our learning while we are outside of school. So this chapter, again, when we first started our dig into reading it, you think about it in theory, and now a lot of the components that are laid out in chapter 1 are really coming into play with this NTI experience. And I think that it'll be really interesting to see how it continues in the fall and beyond that. And just to end, one of the things that the chapter says that I really thought was interesting is that our students are already there. They spend hours in the worlds that they create in Minecraft, or, now kids are on TikTok all day long. So they're in these worlds all day. They spend hours there. And as educators, we can either continue to do what we've always done, or we can use blended learning to bridge the gap between where education currently is and where students are. So this will be, really interesting to see how blended learning grows in the future.
That is one of my favorite quotes in the book, the quote about kids are already there. They're already creating these worlds in Minecraft. And now, are we going to embrace this exciting learning opportunity for them? Because they're already there, whether we want to talk about augmented reality or not. And I think about my own kids in the Minecraft worlds that they've created during this time. And it's just like, how can we, if that's what excites them and engages them, how can we incorporate that into the classroom and give them those opportunities? So very powerful chapter. We're going to move into chapter 2. Thanks so much, Sade, with Jack Bosley.
Yeah, I just have to say that I agree with both of you. We had to set a hard and fast rule at our house that no Minecraft can occur until both my kids are done with their NTI work, because it was creating all sorts of animosity between the two, that somebody would get an early jump into the Minecraft world. So been thinking a lot about you, Jill Munger, lately with all your work in Minecraft. But,
I think that should be some of their NTI work.
That's right. So let me get over here where I know Matt's doing this, but I'm looking at my own slides. So coming off of what Sade just said, the question, all of chapter 2 is about how you get started. And really there are 4 main steps to do that. And it's pretty well laid out with, like most things, you want to establish a vision and decide what your purpose is, move on into the assessment of your stakeholders, get into planning and design, and then establish a pre-pilot for what is working so that you can try things at a small scale and fail forward, I guess. So step one with that vision and purpose is really identifying who your stakeholders are and engaging them to make sure that you're getting all your voices heard from administrators, teachers, and the students themselves, so that everybody has a voice in what's going to happen in blended learning. Then you move into the assessment phase where you're trying to figure out what's your starting point? Where is everybody at? Going back to that SAMR model, are we in the shallow end? Are we in the deep end? How are we going to assess where we're at as both a district and at the school level to figure out both the principal's proficiency and teachers' proficiency in the blended learning model? And then moving right into the planning and design, what digital content do we want to have as part of this? What tools are we going to be using and apps? And how are we going to train teachers and get that PD out so that we can do this successfully? And then the pre-pilot, again, I think is one of the smartest parts that Caitlin and the other authors talk about, is that you don't want to do a full-blown version of this. The pre-pilot is designed to make sure it's okay to mess things up. And if that does happen, how are we going to reassess to move forward and make it better? To find, like I put in this slide, where are the kinks in the system?
And so, Jack, that chapter is really high level. That's district level, thinking about blended learning. And I know that there is a big district push with this notion of everyone to one is kind of where we're heading in the fall, and the funding. And so when we think about, we can't just put devices in schools without a plan. So your chapter is really about what the district should be thinking as they prepare for one-to-one rollouts, and what principals should be thinking, and ensuring that everyone has the same instructional vision when it comes to blended learning, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So it gives you kind of a blueprint on where are you now and where are you going. That's exactly right. And I think it can be done both simultaneously at the district level and the school level.
Very good. All right. So thanks so much, Jack. And these are all things that we're thinking about as a district. We've been talking about digital agility from the top down for quite some time, and really trying to build the capacity and the digital agility of the adults for the past 2 years as we've launched the Backpack of Success Skills. So where do we go next? We definitely need to be thinking about blended learning vision and strategy. So great chapter. All right, moving into chapter 3. Who's up?
I believe that is me. All right, so chapter 3.
Hey, Kathleen, I know everyone knows who you are, but just in case, just introduce yourself and your role.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. I always forget that part. So my name is Kathleen Receiver, and I am the digital innovation leader along with James Unger for our Zone 2 crew, the 32 elementary schools. So my chapter talks about the blended learning elements of effectiveness. So there are 4 different elements that Catlin Tucker discusses about the effectiveness of blended learning. And capacity building is one of the first ones that you can see on the slide. And she states that the capacity building is the foundation of the blended learning initiative, and that one of the greatest challenges of the blended learning initiative is that the teachers and the leaders and the students are all learning new skills together. So this reminds me a lot of right now, a lot of us are all with NTI learning these new skills together. Just like Sade said, we're doing this part of it now with NTI. And that this new paradigm can be very unsettling for our instructional leaders, as well as the teachers and even the students and the parents. And it creates anxiety and just nervousness. So that is very normal. But on the other hand, Richardson, who, I don't know if you listen to TED Talks, but Catlin says that Richardson in his TED Talk talks about people who model their own learning process are better able to connect to other learners as a regular part of their day. And then they can continuously learn around the things that they have a passion for. And I really like that quote in the book. If you really think about that, it really resonates with me, and I'm sure a lot of you as well. So building the capacity is very important. And then the next thing that is extremely important for the effectiveness of blended learning is also the technology that is involved, the technology utilization of technology. So one thing with technology is, yes, it's important, but making sure, and as many of you may be aware, making sure that we are using that technology as it is appropriate and meaningful. And we want to, as we watch with the SAMR video, we want to make sure that it is enhancing our instruction. We're not just using technology to say we use technology and scanning a worksheet and putting it in Google Classroom. So really making sure that the technology is enhancing what we are doing. And then we go into, sorry, I'm doing kind of what Jack is doing, is going back and forth between my slide, the data management. So as far as data management usage, since leveraging formative data is to adjust your personalized instruction, it's one of the greatest benefits of an effective blended learning initiative. So using that formative assessments and data to go back and see what is working and what is not. A lot of this book really discusses the assessment part. And I'm not going to go into that because I know that one of the chapters here in a little bit, we'll discuss more of the data. Okay, and then the last but definitely not least is the student ownership. So the height of a blended learning initiative is when students or learners take ownership of their learning. And that's a quote right out of the book from Catlin. And so part of that student ownership, as you can see on my slide, there are 4 different elements there: the self-resourcing, self-directing, reflecting, and correcting. So inside of her book, and like Heather said, if any of my Zone 2 schools are out there watching, I'm happy to let you check that book out from me once we get back to school. It is at school or at Camp Edwards, but I'm happy to let you borrow that. With self-directing, the student has input into the content and the pace and also the structure of their learning process. And then you go into self-resourcing, the student has access to resources that can facilitate the learning process and the wherewithal to identify any additional resources that they may need. And then you go into the correcting. The student has their own self-awareness to reset and reorient their path when they're faced with challenges. And then they go into reflecting. So as a student assesses the overall process and makes broader, they can make broader adjustments as needed. So this is a really good chapter just to talk about the real key. And as you can see, my beautiful, I know Matt was proud of me for my chart here, my beautiful elements of effectiveness, that these are really important when we're talking about blended learning and starting this initiative in your classroom and school.
Thanks so much, Kathleen. I want to read a few of the comments coming in. Brian Franklin had a really good one. It's about the task, not the tools. Figure out the task first. That's the end game. Then what lends itself to that. And we could not agree more. What else are you guys seeing in the chat? And there's a lot of good conversation.
Well, I think that when Chelsea just hit the nail on the head, was it's so hard to give up that control and let your kids just kind of fly high and go beyond your expectations, because we try so hard to have that classroom management and keep that under reins, but then it's difficult to let them go and be free and go outside of your boundaries of what you expected for this, for a lesson. So that is a very good point. And it's hard, but it's just a practice that we need to make sure that it's a muscle that we have to practice and strengthen as well, to let our kids fly high and innovate rather than just regurgitate.
Yeah, that's a good point, Elaine. not to keep harping on Minecraft, but when I was out helping teachers earlier this year, they were so worried that they felt like they had to master Minecraft to know absolutely everything that the kids know. And that's just not going to happen. They are so far ahead of us when it comes to stuff like Minecraft and other things that they're into, like we've said, for hours in a day, that it would take you all year to catch up with them. So you just have to let some of that go.
Yeah, it's the same point I was going to bring up, Jack. Absolutely. There's so many teachers that are like, oh, well, I really want, and like, you're going to learn from your students, and that's as it should be. They've been doing it for years. They've been playing it, depending on how old they are. They've been playing it for many years. But never be afraid to learn from them. We say fail forward. It's a learning experience, which is what it should be for all.
And I was even thinking,
I wanted to just pull in real quick, Danielle, what Kimberly Curry said ties to that. She said, my scholars teach me all the time. They really rise to the occasion when they have the opportunity to demonstrate leadership and ownership. And that's awesome, Kimberly. And sometimes as teachers, we just have to let go and be okay with not being the expert. What were you going to say, Danielle?
Sorry. Yeah, girl, that's Zone 2 crew teacher right there.
Love it. I was even going to reference yesterday we had the show with John Bacon and Tinkercad, and that was the theme of the show. He even talked about how he didn't know a lot about Tinkercad. Well, of course he knew a lot about it, but students were even showing him items in Tinkercad that he didn't even know. So that's a good point to note, that we give students that tool and we let them fly. We don't have to be the expert in that tool, and we let them curate.
That's right. Okay, so that's a good ramp into the next chapter. Who's up next? And viewers, each of the digital innovation leaders has up to 5 minutes to discuss their chapter. So as they're discussing, keep those questions and comments going. Who's next?
I am. Hello, I'm Jim Unger. I'm the digital innovation leader for Zone 2 with my partner, Kathleen Receiver, Zone 2 crew. All right. And we talk about preparing teachers for blended instruction. And it's very interesting, and I always like to draw parallels, but you'll see that in here that talks about teaching teachers, and a lot of things they talk about with that is the same as how you would teach students with some of the things we should do. And one of the first comments they make in this chapter is that most professional development is wasting teachers' valuable time. And I think anybody that's been in education for a while could probably agree with that on a lot of professional developments they've been to. So they go through in this chapter and talk about what should be going on and what should not be going on to make for effective professional development when looking at blended education. So when we look at this, they talk about transitioning from owners of information to facilitators of learning. And many of the comments they make is interesting, as they talk about, teachers having to change their frame of mind and understand the walls of the classroom come down. But I think we're so knee deep in that now, it's unavoidable. So it's very interesting. And then we need to look at how to change preparing teachers for that. So they talk about what works in professional development. So they've got D&D, which stands for duration and distribution. And they look at PD, and through studies, they've shown that the most effective is doing like 14 hours on a topic, but breaking that up over time so that they can revisit it. Once again, much like we do with students. C&C is coaching and collaboration. And that's really what gets into with the second book that we've talked about, is looking at how do we do the coaching process? How do we keep this ongoing learning with the teachers and making contact with them? And that's through coaching and collaboration. It's an extremely important piece. Then they talk about simulation of practice, which is role-playing through activities, looking at what you're going to be learning. And probably one of the best science PDs I was at was with Lacey Eccles in Charlotte. And we actually went through a unit in science and did the experiments as if we were students and we were the teachers at their PD. And we learned so much by doing it, and we knew what troubles the students would run into because we actually got to do it. So that's what's important with technology, is the same way. And I really like that teachers are having to meet now virtually, and they see the collaboration and things that their students are going to have to go through. And that's a great way to learn. You learn by doing. So then with the technology, it's interactive digital learning experiences. If we want you to learn about a Chromebook, you need to be using a Chromebook. If you want to learn about an iPad and how to use it, use the iPad. So very important there is actually using the things you're talking about. And so a lot of that points to embedding the training into your day and seeing those people that are wanting you to get the professional development, showing it to you. And then it gets into a lot of what not to do. And some of the things you've probably experienced before in your careers, what not to do, top-down mandates, somebody coming in directing, this is what I want you to do. I'm not going to have anything else to do with it. I'm done. So no leadership involvement. Obviously, that's bad. One size fits all. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. Much like the students in our classroom, we all have varying levels of skill, and we need to understand that, especially when it comes to technology and blended learning. Don't take teacher training and tie it to punitive measures. That's certainly not going to go well. Forcing teachers across the gap, and I'll talk about that. That comes into differentiating for teachers, much like we would for students. The gap they're discussing, and I'm really rushing through this. There's so much in this chapter. It's really good talking about how to prepare your teachers, and you have to do it long before you get your students there, because like a couple of my friends have already talked about, most of the students already have, and they're thirsty for this. But we got to get this front loaded with the teachers. So what they're talking about, that gap, is they talk about in this chapter the different levels where you have people that are really great with technology. They've used it. They're experienced. You have, when they talk about marketing, you have your early market, people that are in there getting it. And then there's this gap. And then you have the people at the very end that are just coming in. They want to make sure everything works. I'm cool with it. Those are the ones that are really been doing a lot of that substitution from SAMR before they ever move into anything being comfortable with it. And how do we get them across that gap is using these techniques. And with CHOMP, it talks about how to conduct this. And it's things to keep in mind while you're doing your training: collaboration, hands-on, ongoing, having the right mindset, and personalizing. Because teachers are not going to learn the same. Obviously, if you're looking at a more seasoned teacher that has not been around the technology, or they've been using some different things, then you have some new teachers coming in and they're all these ideas and bursting out of them. They've been using the technology. They've been around it all their lives. So it's going to be a little bit different for them. And we need to keep that in mind when we're delivering our professional developments. One of the things we like to do is we love putting our videos up, and you go through it as you need. You may want to go back over something 3 or 4 times, or maybe you just want to skip past that. Oh, I know how to do that. Let me jump past that. So that's the great idea about using YouTube to put out our development.
So Jim, chapter. So this chapter is all about preparing teachers, and fortunately, unfortunately, how you look at it, all teachers were kind of thrown into being digital teachers during this NTI closure. So a lot of people had to just jump in and start swimming, which we've seen people really soar to new heights during this.
I think one of the greatest things is seeing everybody getting all these new certifications that they didn't have. They're getting Apple certified, Google certified, I'm getting Screencastify certified. And it's so great that the skills that they're gaining are just huge. Even when we return, those are those things we want to see carried over, and that's where it starts to blend.
And Heather, you mentioned us being kind of thrust into this. We were helping a gentleman in the live video technical chat who was so excited. And I was like, oh, how long have you been teaching? And he said, well, I was set to retire this year. He said, and I thought, well, I've got all my packets made up. I'm ready to go. And this it. He said, so now I'm learning a ton. I don't know what I'll do with it, but I'm learning a lot. So I was like, that's great.
That's exciting, yes. So I guess when we get back to our schools, just the intentional support plan in supporting teachers with, now let's take this back into a brick and mortar building, and let's talk about how you can continue integrating technology meaningfully to make an impact in student learning. So the next couple chapters are going to talk about that. So let's move on. Who is up next?
That would be me, Russ Hockenberry, Zone 3 Digital Innovation Lead. For elementary schools, and I had chapter 5, and so this chapter was all about devices and digital tools. So this quote was in this chapter. It just says, if teachers don't use tech tools that students rely upon outside the classroom, students will find the work they do in school to be more and more disconnected and irrelevant to their actual lives. So to me, that, thinking about using this technology, kids are using iPads at home. They're doing stuff. You see teachers creating TikTok videos and principals creating TikTok videos. So we've kind of brought that world into this NTI world as well. And so we're using those tools that these students are familiar with, and they're making it more relevant to their lives. So that was a great quote to bring into this NTI situation that we're in right now. And in this chapter, they talk about critical spaces for learning. And there are critical spaces for learning in a traditional classroom, like, for example, where we get information, we look on the board. Teachers write information on the board. But in the digital classroom, we might look where the information is going to be. It might be on the blog or on the stream of your Google Classroom. That's where students may get information from. There's discussion. Where does discussion happen in a traditional classroom? Usually it happens in real time, whether it's whole class or small group. But in a digital classroom, we have an ability to make it asynchronous. We can have discussions that aren't necessarily in real time, whether that's through something as archaic as email or Google Classroom, or we can make them synchronous through Google Meet. Discussion happens in Google Meet, obviously, during this time, during office hours or whole class meetings or small group meetings. Collaboration. When we talk about collaboration in a traditional classroom, usually it happens in a small group, or pairs or whatever, think, pair, share, that kind of stuff. But with Google Classroom, in that digital classroom, we can use Google Apps. Google Apps are built for collaboration. So a perfect differentiated instruction there with collaboration in a digital classroom. And I feel like that's going to be even more important as we go back into school. If social distancing is a part of our lives, we're going to have to find ways to collaborate digitally. And so those Google Apps are perfect for that. Creation. In a traditional classroom, kids might get out pens, paper, glue, different materials, build things with. But when a digital classroom, we're talking stuff like they're creating videos, they're creating infographics, different digital art. So you see there just the difference in the spaces for learning there between the traditional classroom versus the digital classroom. And so we need to have those things in mind when we think about what kind of devices we want for our school. So this graphic here is a lady thinking about what kind of devices she'd want for her school. And she's thinking about the plus and minuses of each device there. And so tablets, laptops, Chromebooks, BYOD, bring your own device, is something that's mentioned in the book. It's really not so much of an option in JCPS. But when we think of tablets, laptops, and Chromebooks, they all have their pluses and minuses. But you really have to think about what you want to do with that device in order to, basically, if I want to do, what do you want kids to create? Does a Chromebook lend itself more to that, or does a iPad or tablet? Do I want to do this, or do I want to do that? Battery life may be an issue you look at. Do you want a keyboard? Is a keyboard not so important? That kind of stuff. But we want to get out of making blanket recommendations. People would ask us all the time, do you recommend iPads or Chromebooks? Really, we want our kids to be digitally agile. And that's what that agility toolbox is down at the bottom there. We want to have digital agility, and they can have multiple, basically, where they can pick up any device and be able to do anything on that device. And so that's what we need to think about too, is we can't be in a Chromebook world, but also expect kids to know how to use iOS apps. So digital agility is important. They call it digital fluency in the book, but we actually call it on our team digital agility. And that's just being able to pick up any device at any time and being able to run with it and create.
Yeah, it goes back, Russ, to what Brian said in the chat. What is the task that you want those kids to do? And what you say all the time, you're our biggest cheerleader on that student creation piece. What is it that they want to create? And this is the device that you need to do that. And making sure kids and schools have all of those choices would be ideal.
Absolutely.
So Russ, real quick, speaking of creation, let's give a quick shout out, an STLP shout out. Would you share the good news with everyone about STLP Stayed at Home?
Yeah, we had 6 schools move on to level 3 judging for their showcase projects. So 6 JCPS schools, 5 elementary schools, and 1 middle school that moved on. So that was great news. And at 1 o'clock today, KDE is streaming the winners. So
very exciting. Thanks, Russ. That was a powerful chapter. So team, we're running out of time. So let's do like 3 minutes. And tomorrow we'll be back with book number 2. So let's get through book number 1 today. Who's up next, Stephen?
That is me. Yes, Stephen Durham, Digital Innovation Team, birthday boy. My kid decorated my room. My chapter was about the digital curriculum. And if you look, digital curriculum defined, there's textbook and workbook replacement. But it was interesting coming back to this slide during NTI because lecture replacement. When I originally read about this, I was like, oh, that's great. Teachers can make a video and their students can be watching that video while the teachers may be working with other students in a different station. But one of the barriers to that is how do we get teachers to actually make instructional videos? And during NTI, so many have made videos with Screencastify or clips that they've actually, they now have that skill. So I think it's great that a lot of teachers are going to go back to the classroom ready to do that lecture replacement part. And then station rotation integration plays a big part in it as well. And I believe Matt Balka will talk about this more. But the way I did my slide, if you click down there on that blended learning video, I actually went to a classroom and I taught the classroom the traditional way, where I gave all the directions and all the students were doing the same work at the same time. And then I monitored the work and helped the students as they went. And then we tried the blended learning approach where there was a group of students on iPad devices. There were a group of students that were collaborating, working together, and then the teacher was with a small group. After we did this, we interviewed the students to see, like, what did you like about each one? And the kids loved, 1, being able to use technology, 2, being able to collaborate together during that time, and also getting that smaller group instruction with their teacher. And so that's a really important part of the blended learning model. And like I said, Matt will cover that more later. But when we go into the digital curriculum, a lot of it is about, just like Russ said, with when you go to pick your device, so many times it's on such a tight turnaround schedule, and you might look for, okay, what can we get the best price and how can we move forward? But it's important when you make those decisions for your school, you might want to get a committee together and talk through it. You might want to get student input, or actually you should get student input. Find out, is Dreambox or Zern going to be the better product for our students? Which one will our student population respond to best? And then make sure that you build capacity through professional development. Don't just buy a program because you heard another school was successful with it and then implement it, and your teachers never really learn how to take the data from that program to instruct their learning further. I was just thinking about when we're talking about Dreambox and Zern being used in the classroom, I was just thinking about those Study Island videos that we've been having on the Digital Learning Channel lately. So like Study Island was introduced and not a lot of teachers had training for it, but we've had all that training going on the Digital Learning Channel. And now I think our staff that is using Study Island can really get in there and see how they can use that digital curriculum tool to impact student learning. And then I just want to finish with the quote from a 9th grade student. I feel most creative when the topic of the assignment is not narrowed down to the point where everyone is doing the same work. And again, I got to go back to what's happening in NTI with choice. These kids are going to come out, they're going to expect to be using technology in some form in their classroom, and they're going to want to have that choice. And blended learning is going to give them opportunities for that.
Love it. All right. Who's up next? Great chapter, Stephen.
Hey guys, Kyle Chandler, Digital Innovation Leader with Miracle Middle Schools with my partner Elaine Abernatha. And Durham, I just wanted to quickly say, agree 100%. And if any of you guys from our respective zones need help on any of those committees for technology or anything like that, if we can be of assistance, let us know. We'd love to help. So this chapter was about assessment and learning. And my team will know why this is funny. This is my good slide. So this is this one has to do what I mostly found to be with kind of in ways what we're doing a little bit. We're a little bit ahead of the curve because in some points it talks about not just relying on previous years' standardized assessment data to see where students are before you move forward with your blended learning strategy, but to really be intentional about continuing that throughout the year. So if you think, well, what has JCPS done to kind of break that up in the last few years? We instituted math testing. So yeah, we still do K-Prep and all those mandatory things, state and national testing when required, but we initiated math testing through our own fruition so that we could see better snapshots and smaller spans of student improvement and can adjust accordingly. So it kind of even suggests a step further within the classroom and giving regular formative assessments, as opposed to the summative assessments less frequently to kind of get a better gauge of where students are more regularly using digital tools to adjust that blended learning strategy. It discusses with assessment in a blended learning environment the power of instant feedback. There's a direct correlation between that and student success. The research shows in Catlin Tucker's book that we read. And again, I believe I'm referencing chapter 8 in my slide deck there. So that was very powerful, and I believe we know that to be true. We've experienced it ourselves, and we try to give that to our students, but it is difficult sometimes with some of the traditional methods. When we move to these digital tools and these new blended environments, it frees up a lot of things, and we can put some of that leverage on the technology to do that for us, and then we can give the student feedback. Talks about maximizing the learning management systems. So a lot of you guys, again, we've kind of been thrust upon. We've got great utilization for Google Classroom and things of that nature. So that's huge. But in there, you can do polls, and there's a grade book in there, and tests and quizzes. You can upload rubrics. Making it personal. And so this goes back to some of my other coworkers, pals earlier mentioned this, that you could make it personal through the use of technology, not just a device, not just an iPad necessarily or what have you, but mixing up what's available to the students. Yes, it's nice in theory to have a device in every student's hand, but I've given the opportunity if you maybe mix that up with some Spheros or some robots or some virtual reality goggles or things of that nature. You never know if you give them access to, or the makerspace, 3D printing, what's really going to spark in a student until they have exposure to it. And that's part of our job with digital agility, is to make sure that they get that access.
Awesome, Kyle. We're going to move on to Elaine. I really want to get to the station rotation and the blended learning model that Matt's going to share. So Elaine, do you want to hit a couple points on your slide real quick?
Absolutely. So this just talks about the ability of, or the different abilities in a classroom. And they just talks about how you have high flyers and one that's never even had technology outside of school. And it's important for us as teachers to realize the different levels and differentiation of our kids. And right, exactly what Kyle just said is that we need to make sure that we understand that differentiation. But and then we have to think about it's never just one device. You have to do the different devices and give them that exposure of those different devices as well. And we have an amazing checkout things that you can do with our IT3 department. So you want to check out and see those different devices that you might be able to get your hands on, as well as we have devices that we can come in and model for you as well as a team. Make sure that you differentiate for those tools and know the ones that are those high flyers, and not just make sure that, or expect that all of them are entry level. Allow, and I think this is important, to allow the high flyers to model that for the other students and give them the spotlight, and they'll teach you. You don't necessarily have to know it through and through, and I think we've said that before. And then one thing we want to make sure that we talk about is digital citizenship. Our students are constantly in this in this world, these virtual world, and it's so important for them to understand what digital footprint that they leave for their oncoming future. And we need to make sure that we are touching on the digital citizenship, and just make sure that you take those teachable moments and talk about that digital citizenship, as well as modeling your mistakes. And it's okay to make a mistake, and that you too are a lifelong learner.
Awesome. Thanks, Elaine. Now, Matt, how do we do blended learning in the classroom in regards to station rotation and some good blended learning models?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about station rotation really quickly. So when I did this, I tried to be the hot shot on the team and actually make a station rotation lesson for everyone. So I'm going to go through really quickly. So this is what a station rotation looks like. You have your students move through different rotations. So I made 3 for this lesson. One where you can see it's the computer and the students. They're doing an independent reading. One where you can see it's the teacher and the students, where they talk about strategies and design for small group instruction. And then one where it's students and students working together with a small group card sort. And so what I do when I was a teacher and I did station rotation was, at the different stations, I was in a chemistry lab. So I was able to print off these instructions and have them taped to the lab station. But my students would take, depending on how many stations I had and depending on how long I wanted each station to be. But typically my classes were 45 minutes, so it would be like 9 to 10 minutes per station. They would move through about 4 or 5 stations, and they would follow these instructions. So they would make a copy of something, or I would have it in their Google Classroom for them or something like that. They would read this passage, they would take notes, they would discuss, and they would do these different instructions at each station. So what station rotation allows us to do is it allows the students to have different learning experiences in the classroom while getting different parts of that content. And I believe Caitlin Tucker in her book goes through what an English lesson would look like. So maybe one of the stations is the students learning some vocabulary collaboratively, and another station is them reading through half of a chapter of To Kill a Mockingbird. And then another station is going through and analyzing some of the symbols from a previous chapter, or something like that. And you want to have these stations where they don't necessarily build off each other, because the students are going to go through them in different orders, but to allow different types of learning, different modes of learning, and different types of collaboration to occur in those. It is very challenging at times to create these things, but as a teacher, it is the best thing you will ever do for yourself. 2 years ago, I took my chemistry curriculum. I made it entirely self-paced, collaborative, and self-driven, and I worked one-on-one with my students as they went through different stations. And as a chemistry teacher, that meant I had labs and readings and all these things going on. And at times it feels like controlled chaos, but it's so much better for me. It's so much better for my students, and the learning is just so much more powerful that way.
You were a high school chemistry teacher,
yes,
and you made it happen.
Yep.
And I think we need to do a whole episode just on that, talking about your experiences and your structure. Danielle, bring us home.
Yes, so Danielle Washburn, high school and state agency digital innovation leader. Okay. So I'm going to go fairly quick through my slide because we do have 2 minutes left. But my slide was on whole group rotation. And whole group rotation uses online components to allow students the opportunity to control the pace and path of their learning. So it's all about personalization. Our teachers designing lessons so students can get the most benefit from their learning. The book also talks about how to even design a whole group rotation by incorporating digital tools. And we know now that we are on ATI, most of our students are using devices. We do still have students using paper packets, but she goes through 3 simple steps on how to design a whole group rotation. And that is, first, identify the target skill and learning objectives, design activities that focus on the identified skill, and then decide how technology can be used to enhance and personalize learning. So I know this entire talk has been about, or can we incorporate Minecraft? And you can incorporate Minecraft in designing those lessons. In the book, there are also sample lesson plans that you can go through. There's a Google Drawing. I know my teacher, my kindergarten daughter teacher, she really used the whole group rotation by designing
specific groups to incorporate learning. And the last thing that I want to talk about is crowdsourcing. She really does a good job of explaining what crowdsourcing is, and that is really looking at how now students are the flow of the information instead of solely the teacher, because the students do have the ability to go out and do their research, look on Google on how to incorporate or how to learn about those targets, those learning targets. And I know that we are over time, but the book is available. Matt and I, if you're a high school or state agency, we do have the book for you so you can borrow.
Thanks so much, Danielle. So this book is really just a first step, big picture overview into blended learning. And it really breaks it down and we start stepping into the group rotation. On Monday, you need to come back because on Monday, we are going to take it a step further and talk about Power Up Blended Learning. So the next book, Power Up Blended Learning, we will be back for an hour extended share on that book, and we'll go deeper into best practices with blended learning in your classrooms. Thanks so much to this fabulous digital innovation team. I always say I'm so blessed to work with such amazing, caring, passionate educators, and I'm grateful for you. And I think up next, Matt, were you able to show that book that we're going to be doing on Monday?
Yes, I can. So this is the book we just did right here. You can see I tore mine apart. And then the book we're going to be doing on Monday is Power Up Blended Learning here. And I don't know if that's going to appear mirrored on your screen or not. So if it is mirrored, find a mirror and get it the right way, and you'll see it says Power Up Blended Learning.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And I believe the remarkable Sandra Hogue has joined us, and you want to stick around for Sandra. If you want to get fired up and get your bucket filled, she is a remarkable JCPS educator, and I've learned so much from her through this process. So Sandra, welcome, and thanks everyone. We'll see you on Monday.
Thank you, Heather. Wow, it's hard to follow such a tremendous introduction. I hope to not disappoint. Yesterday, I was a little off kilter, so I hope that I am able to live up to that great introduction. So thank you all for joining me this morning. I've not been able to get closed captioning to work. I think it may be my device, and so I click it each time, but it never works. And so I'm just going to go. I am Sandra Hogue.
Sandra, sorry, it might be because you have to click on the CC button instead of the arrow. If you click on where it says CC right there, it says can't turn on your microphone. Oh man, okay, well that's all right.
So I don't know. I've tried a million times. I'm giving up now. So. I am the AIS ELA instructional lead with JCPS, and my Twitter handle is there, Sandra L. Hogue. And so if you'd like to connect on Twitter, I'd love to see you there. This session's journey, we're looking at, I guess I could give you the title of the session, Write All About It, Writing to Accelerate Learning. And in this session, I always like to give the why in my sessions and then the what, or with anything. Anytime I'm working with teachers or kids, I like for them to understand why we're doing something and then what we're doing, right? So then they have buy-in when it comes to attaching that new learning to skills they already possess. And so we'll start with looking at what KDE says about writing and where writing fits in the curriculum as a whole. And we're also, and that is that most of that will come from a new document that KDE has just released this year. And then the second, of course, are the standards, which are also from KDE. That really could be one bullet there. But the standards that were released and then updated by KDE a couple of years ago. Then we'll look at the what, writing in early primary, writing in late primary, writing in intermediate and middle grades, writing in high school. Each of those easily could fill a whole year's worth of study, right? But we have 30 minutes, so I hope to give you nuggets and that will plant seeds that will give you things to think about that you can fold into your practice no matter the level where you work primarily. So the why, hearing from KDE. As I said, they released this document recently, just this year, that helps to provide clarity and additional information around what the standards are asking of us when it comes to teaching writers. And so this is a live link. If you connect with the slide deck, you can go directly to this 30-ish page document. But in it, it won't ring unfamiliar. In fact, will be able to say, oh yeah, this is familiar. These are things we've always valued. But they're just, once again, seeking to clarify and provide a bit more information about them. They feature the 3 types of writing. We know writing to learn, writing to demonstrate learning, and writing for publication. And then they also speak to composition standards 1, 2, and 3, argument and opinion writing, informative explanatory, and narrative writing. They also provide scoring resources that are aligned with KDE's on-demand writing scoring rubric, but they also align with what it means to write well. So it's not like they've made up these grand ideas of what it means to do well just on K-Prep. They have aligned those rubrics with what it means to write well in each of those contexts. So those first 3 bullets really, or arrows, are designed for kind of that zooming in. Let's look at the specifics of what they're asking us to do. The 4th bullet, and it really is one of my favorite, and probably because the first 3 are already really familiar to me. But the 4th one really provides a purpose to the others. So it gives us a reason to understand why it's important to write to learn, why it's important to write to demonstrate learning, why it's important to write to publish. And it gives, once again, some purpose to argument writing. How might I use my voice to argue my stance on an issue? How might I use my voice to inform and to tell stories? And so the role of research in composition, it helps us to understand how we find out a bit more and then use that to articulate our voices to a broader audience. The next one is the standards themselves. And so once again, this is a link to the standards. I know with a contract in Kentucky, you know about the standards if you teach ELA. However, I have this on many of the slides in this presentation because as a teacher with a contract in JCPS and who works with KDE, we have to keep the standards out front. I say oftentimes our kids do not, and they don't. They don't have to care about the standards. But as a person in charge of facilitating the learning environment, I have to care about the standards. I have to find ways to bridge who the students are as people and bring who they are as people in contact with things I need them to learn, according to what the state has outlined. And so in the standards document, it's over 500 pages. I don't know anyone who's read it cover to cover, including the people who authored the entire thing, because they did that in segments. It is designed for you to pull things that are most relevant to your work. And when it comes to composition, they have these fat paragraphs and in the overview section for K5 and 6 to 8 and 9 to 12 that give you, once again, this pocket-sized bit of information of things you need to consider if you teach writers at that level. So I just really like this handy, I can bring it out front. It can remind me of the big picture for my grade band. And then I go to the standards at my level and I have better understanding or clarity about how my piece fits with that bigger picture at my grade level. And so now moving into the what, writing in early primary. Once again, standards, there's the link there because we have to keep that out front. I consult when I look at writing and the best practices in writing, the National Writing Project. They have been working on studying, developing resources, researching, writing at every content level from preschool to postgraduate work for decades, right? So they are the national leaders when it comes to having a voice about what it means to teach writers well. And so I'm part of that organization, and really every interaction I've ever had with them makes me better. And so I had an opportunity to work with them on a project on an institute looking at early primary writers in Philadelphia this past year. And the process that we worked through and discussed and talked about and wrestled with is the one you see on the screen here. With our early primary writers, remember, they are just learning letters and sounds. They have these colorful things to say. Think about kids say the darndest things, right? They have amazing things to share with us that oftentimes stop us in our tracks. And so their ability to communicate in the natural science system of speaking does not mirror their ability to capture that in the unnatural science system of writing, written communication. So we have to open up opportunities to allow them to grow in that way. And one of the realities is writing is one of those things that will not grow if we don't allow kids to, I call it a muscle. We don't flex that writing muscle, then they'll never grow. So in this early primary cycle they presented with the National Writing Project, it allows room for kiddos to flex their writing muscles so that they can begin to capture on paper some of those many wonderful things that we know they have to say that they articulate verbally. And so in this process, they draw a story or they draw their information. Then they go into kid writing, stretching out words. They use approximations, they use their best spelling, they use the word wall, they use the things that they have access to in order to capture their thoughts on paper. Then the third step is what the National Writing Project calls adult spelling, but you'll see I call it book spelling because it is true that not every adult spells well, right? We don't want to assign perfection to adults because that leads kiddos to believe that all adults are perfect, and we know that adults are flawed in many ways. Langston Hughes has a piece that I read from time to time where he talks about, from a kid's voice, the first time he realized that adults lie, right? So assigning perfection to adults is just a slippery slope. So I like calling it book spelling. And then they're sharing in that process where their voices deserve to be heard. And so they go through this cycle of flexing their writing muscles and they become more fluent writers. And so this image here is also a link, once again, to the full site that describes kid writing and provides far more background than what I've articulated here. Also available, and something I'd like to encourage with our early primary writers, is what EL Education offers. It is a website, tried and true. It passes all of the measurements on the rubric for high quality instruction for kiddos. And so they have material at even early primary levels that help us to understand how reading and writing and deeper learning, because often their units are attached to content like science and social studies, which is where I'd love to see, and I'm encouraging us to go as a district, especially in our elementary schools, with thinking about literacy. And so if you look at this cycle from the National Writing Project, it could be easy to say, well, my goodness, we start the writing process, we start the writing in the fall, and then those writers' notebooks that we have kids to decorate so beautifully tend to fall to the wayside, and that's because it becomes stale. Right? So drawing my story every day, if I do that every day from August until November, I'm done with that process, right? And what EL Education does is it gives them purpose behind telling or capturing that information. And so it attaches it to, for example, a compelling question. Here's an example of student work that, I have limited access here because it is NTI, and I have two kiddos here. And so the writing on the sample you see on the left is work that my son crafted just this week. He was reading an informational text, and I taught him how to capture a double entry journal around what he was reading. And so, once again, you have the kid spelling, the approximations. I was not in there saying, no, that's spelled wrong. No, you have, but I did remind him, if you're trying to spell this word, you have access to it right there in the book. So you should utilize that. And so just in that gentle way, I encouraging him to use language to capture what he has to say. And then my feedback at the bottom there. But that's just one example of writing to learn with our early primary writers. And then once again, writing in late primary, it looks different. And once again, here are the standards because we need to keep those out front. But another document that proves really helpful when we're thinking about our practices with late primary students is this document that is it comes from the work of the U.S. Department of Education. So once again, that's the national level of validation for what is best practice in teaching writers. And in this document, it comes through the branch of What Works Clearinghouse. And so they've developed these recommendations for what it should look and sound and feel like to develop effectiveness in elementary writers. And so they recommend, once again, something I already mentioned, which was time for students to write, flexing that writing muscle. And what I'm advocating for with our schools now is not a separate writing workshop. The reality is, now I have to say more about my lens. I work with the Accelerated Improvement Schools. And for those of you who don't know who we are the 35 schools within JCPS that are performing at the bottom 5% of the state. And so we have a lot of ground to cover as individual campuses. We have a lot of acceleration that we're charged with. And so what I have found with, in addition to having lots of acceleration needed, we also find ourselves with greater amounts of trauma, greater amounts of disruptive behaviors, greater amounts of attendance issues. We have lots of hurdles that others, I'm not saying are absent from other schools, but we have them in greater volume than the average school. And I often argue this with folks who say, well, wait a minute, we're over here and we have those challenges too. And I don't doubt that. But what I'm saying is we are AIS for a reason. If you're in the bottom 5% of the state, our needs are different and we have to approach the work differently than everyone else. Because if our needs were identical, there wouldn't even be an umbrella of AIS, right? So in that work, because of all the challenges we face, I am advocating that we not have separate silos of instructional content. So here's my reading time. Okay, I'm going to close that down. Here's my writing time. Okay, I'm going to close that down. Here's my science time. Close that down. Social studies. It's time for lunch. Math time, right? The reality is we're in a position where we need to accelerate. I say to my teachers all the time, don't get excited. Don't expect a pat on the back if you're a third grade teacher and you have kids who come to you with a 2-year deficit, because we hear that all the time, right? Our kids are so far behind. Oh my goodness. But you can't celebrate that at the end of third grade. You've gotten a year's worth of growth out of them. Why? Because you've done nothing to address the achievement gap. And so this kiddo who came to you at a first grade level in your third grade classroom, if you moved him or her to a second grade level, they're still moving into fourth grade with what? A 2-year deficit. So if you get a year and a half worth of growth, then we'll celebrate that. We'll absolutely applaud that because you are moving in the direction that closes the gap. And we know that school to prison pipeline is real. And so when I say we have a bigger job in AIS, it really is. There's that urgency there that we have to address things differently. So while I'm saying flex their writing muscles on a daily basis, not in this silo, as Heather would agree, it is a killer of really educational progress. That silo of saying it's my writing time, because what it does is wither and dies on the vine. Once again, we get folks who stop teaching writing because other things appear to be more important. Instead, I'm advocating for the use of interdisciplinary units of study where we're using a compelling question, as Ryan New and Suzanne Kramer advocated for on the digital channel earlier in NTI, where they talked about we move from a compelling question and then we attach real reasons to use reading and writing and science and social studies to explore answers to those compelling questions. I went all year calling them essential questions, but when we know better, we're supposed to do better. And really their correct term is a compelling question. And so anyway, you have them write daily. You help them understand the writing process. I don't need to read those to you, but I would like you to look at the third bullet that talks about the need for word processing, because we know K-Prep is going digital. And so we're going to have to ensure that we're providing opportunities for kids to craft, to capture their ideas, to take notes, to create products using those typing skills, because otherwise, it won't really matter how well I've taught kids to use the craft of writing if they aren't able to capture that on that keyboard at the time of K-Prep. I mean, it will matter. It'll matter in the long run, but it won't. I always say the biggest heartbreak is when students know something, and I've had this happen on K-Prep before, when I know my kiddos know something, but it doesn't show up on the test. That is the most crushing thing for me as a teacher, and it's crushing for the kids as well, because you know they know it, but it's a shift in the presentation of the material that creates that obstacle. So we have to have that awareness and act accordingly. And then they engage as a community of writers. In intermediate and middle grades, once again, the standards are here, and I'm going to share some nuggets of things that I've used. Really, I put this here, but it could be at the elementary. It could go all the way up to high school, because the approach of growing writers really is so similar that it's applicable across all the grades. But one of the things I've gotten a lot of traction with is Rain, Steam, and Speed. It was introduced to me in the writing project work with Trisha Mealy. In this book, Fleming, who is the author, presents a process that involved work work that allows kiddos to build their writing stamina. It does not teach writing craft. I'm going to say that 3 times for emphasis. It does not teach writing craft. It will not teach writing craft. What it does is move kids beyond that reaction that says, Ms. Hogue, how long does it have to be? How much do I have to write? How much do I need to say? Because for our minimalist students, right, they're only going to give you those 2 sentences if you say that's how long it has to be. They're only going to give you that 5-sentence paragraph if that's how explicit you are. And we all know that there are folks who write really well, who use an economy of words. I love a powerful short piece that leaves me stopped in my tracks with just a few words. I talk so much. I've never been able to really craft that way because I'm long-winded. And so I just kind of go around the block and down the street because I'm wired that way. But we also know there's power in the economy of words, being succinct and tight and to the point. And so what this does, though, is move kids beyond that need to ask you, how much do I need to write? And it's a system. And if you click on this, I have a 1-pager that I pulled together from Trisha's work because she planted that seed for me that gives you the process, but you give the kids a prompt, you give them time to write. And what I have found in that process that is, if they do it like once a week, by the time they get to that 4th week, they've moved from saying, oh my goodness, I still have more to write. I still have to fit, they stop thinking about the quantity of what they feel like they need to write to saying, wait a minute, it's been 30 minutes already. I'm not finished saying what I need to say. And so once again, it won't give them writing craft, but it will move them to the point where they're not having meltdowns because they have to write for 30 minutes because that feels overwhelming. And so what I do as the teacher, this isn't wasted time for me. What I'm doing is mining those pieces for instructional ideas, right? I'm looking at those pieces and saying, oh my goodness, no one is using ending punctuation. And these sentences are run on, right? They never use a period, or there are no paragraphs found in this piece or whatever. And so as the teacher, I'm making note of the standards that need to be taught based on these samples that the kids are cranking out. So maybe I teach a mini unit on or an inquiry study on what it means to craft a good paragraph, or on compound sentences. And then the next time we have the rain, steam, and speed experience, I can say, we've studied compound sentences. I need to see you guys find at least one meaningful place in your rain, steam, and speed writing today where you're going to capture a compound sentence. So then it moves from, now they know better, I can ask them to do better, right? But initially it's just about quantity. And then we know that reading and writing feed one another. And so you grow reading, they'll grow in writing. If you grow writing, they'll grow in their reading. So those things complement one another. And so this book over here, which each of these are links to the Amazon site, not that I'm promoting Amazon, but it'll just take you, if you're interested in looking at those further. But in this book, I love the way it's laid out because it'll give you a writing lesson on a craft or something that writers need to consider. And then on the very next page, they give you an example of how to apply that to reading. And so it keeps that ping pong effect of moving back and forth, and kids grow in both. And then Ralph Fletcher, tried and true. I stalked him at one point, not really, but I used to go to the NCTE conference every year, and he'd look like, oh my goodness, here she is again. But we're on first name basis now. So, but he does a beautiful job of providing mini lessons where you just kind of get in and say, you know what, my kids are having problems with organizing their ideas, and boom, he'll have a mini lesson on how to take them deeper with that. And then over here is Katie Wood Ray's book, and she rates for the youngest writers. So this book was written for all 300 pages or so of it was written for early primary writers, because Katie has primarily studied preschool to maybe second grade-ish students. But she has a process in here on helping kids to understand craft that is second to none. I've used it with everyone from kindergarten, first grade to adults. It helps me as an adult with, postgraduate work to craft better. And so the process, it's called an organized inquiry. It's in chapter 6. And in it, there's a chart where if my kiddos are writing poetry, or if they're writing prose, or if they're writing a literary essay, or an argument piece, I bring before them a mentor or a few mentors for them to explore, or an infographic. It could be really anything, whatever genre they're about to craft. Then I may put those infographics in front of them. And the first column of that chart says, what do we notice about the infographics that are great, that have captured our attention and are really crafted effectively? And then the second column is, why do you think the author crafted in that way? So it helps them to understand the intention. So I know many of us have probably a lesson on, similes, and then they pop up in everything, right? Kids are flexing their writing muscles. They're going to use them ineffectively before they settle into, well-placed similes, right? And that's part of the process. But pushing them to understand why the author used that crafting technique will give them purpose behind their use of it once they've, kind of played around with it for a while. So what do you notice? Why did the author craft that way? Where have we seen it before? So it encourages connection from text to text. And then, what can we call it? Because oftentimes, as Katie works with these youngest writers, they're not going to call it alliteration or onomatopoeia or hyperbole or metaphor, simile. They may not have the language to attach to that, but they may call it something that works for them. Those sound words, or every word starts the same, they're going to call it something that makes sense for them. And then the final column is most important because it's examples of using it in my craft. So once again, it opens the door to say, guess what? If Jacqueline Woodson can do it, you can also do it. If Sandra Cisneros, Cynthia Ryland, Christopher Paul Curtis, whoever, if they can do it, then you can try those crafting techniques in your material. So it helps them to grow in their craft. And then you'll see this rain, steam, and speed start to grow once again in quality, not just quantity. And then the final, these are bookends of two professional books that I am in love with currently, because to me, they attach writing to this big interdisciplinary picture that I am promoting for our schools, connecting writing to all learning. And so once again, going back to that notion of a compelling question, and then I'm applying reading, writing, science, social studies, deep thinking, and notice how I tied all of those, deeper learning, backpack, all of those in under the umbrella of a compelling question. And kids have meaningful uses of reading, writing, speaking, listening, research, science, and social studies. And so here are a couple of examples from my intermediate writer. As I said, I only have what I have access to here at the house, but this is writing to publish. A couple of examples from one example from my daughter is just blown up on the right. We engaged in digital historian project where we're capturing and seeking to answer the question of how have our lives changed because of the coronavirus. And so this is an artistic, a digital photo piece that my daughter selected. And then that's the museum-like placard that she generated to tell the story of the image. And then we're going to compile those for a time capsule of what's happening with us right now. And then moving into thinking about high school, and you've seen this document once again, just like they created that document for elementary, they've created it for secondary as well. Once again, a link to the standards, and then we move into looking at and thinking about the most important pieces of writing in high school. What you'll notice is with Composition Standard 3, diminishes in frequency and power and expectations, I would say, or shifts in expectations in high school. Moving from 8th to 12th grades, narrative writing is used and encouraged to be used to bolster an argument, to support, to provide a vignette based on the informational piece, to set the context for an informational piece you're about to share. So narrative writing is used in service to argument and informative explanatory writing. And one of the newest additions to JCPS that I'm hoping you guys are taking advantage of as part of NTI, and I think we're looking into next year having access at whether NTI or not on a regular basis in the district. Those decisions are still being made, but right now you can play with it for free, which is beautiful. And this is, and they stand behind some really important thinking when it comes to writing at the high school level. And think CIRCA, and the CIRCA stands for claim, evidence, reasoning, counterclaim, and audience. And because when we think about college and career readiness, this is where kiddos need to be able to perform when they move into most careers, right? And so Think Circa has kind of packaged this beautifully in a digital platform, but the National Writing Project has been toying with claim, evidence, and reasoning for several years now. And so really it's healthy thinking, and it ties to, I had a session once that I led at a conference called Not Just Because My Mama Said So, I think was the title. And then that was the title, and then I had a subtitle on crafting effective arguments, because we don't want folks who just continue to do things because they've always been done that way. I like kiddos to find their voices, to be advocates for standing up for social justice purposes, for example. And so teaching them to craft a claim that it effectively articulates an argument is healthy, even at early primary. And I've done work with this from kindergarten through 12th grade. And then providing evidence that actually supports the claim. Not all evidence is good evidence. And then reasoning and considering the counterclaim and who's your audience, all of those things are there. And this is a link to Think Circus. So if you haven't explored that yet, I'd like to encourage you to do that, because really argument is the order of the day when it comes to writing in high school, and not just in the ELA classroom, but in science, right? Writing a scientific argument, writing a political argument in some of the social sciences. And so just applying that work is effective. They outlined recommendations. I know I'm out of time, so I'm going to stop right there. You can read those. You don't need me to read those to you, but these are, once again, links to those documents. I'll end with this quote: writing and reading decrease our sense of isolation. This is especially relevant during COVID-19. Writing and reading decrease our sense of isolation. They deepen and widen and expand our sense of life. They feed the soul. And so reading and writing really do deserve that place at the table. We just have to embrace ways to pull it out of that silo and help us to understand how it functions to hold learning together in all contexts and give kiddos a voice in this world. Until we meet again, I'm Sandra Hogue. I'm AIS ELA lead. I'm accessible. You can email me. You can find me on Twitter. Please reach out if I can ever be of service to you, or if you want to argue anything I've shared today, or if you just want to say hi, just reach out. I'd love to hear from you guys. I think Heather is still manning this call. If I can get back to the screen.
Sandra, thank you again. Your sessions have been great all week. We love your energy and all the content you share with us. They're just awesome. I just want to say I've known Heather my entire teaching career, and she's always drilled in. We are all writing and reading teachers. So it doesn't matter what content you are, what level you are, like we all should be teaching, writing, and reading. Otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere. So
that's it. Thank you. Thank you for having me. You guys have a blessed day, and I'll see you soon.
Have a good Mother's Day, too. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
You too. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in with us today. It is 10:31. So all of these resources you can find on the digital learning schedule if you go to the teacher toolkit on jcps.me/NTI. That was just Sandra Hogue with Write All About It, Writing to Accelerate Learning. Right now, we are moving into teaching guided reading remotely with Andrea Campbell and Tara Schneider. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you guys because we are past 10:30 already. So welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hello. Will you be able to help us show this? Show some of the videos that's on our slides. We've had issues with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull those up.
I know Ray and Kathleen have helped us with that before. Yep. But I'll present, and then I might have to kick it over to you for help with the videos. That's perfectly fine. Okay. Sorry. Anyhow, hello. My name is Tara Schneider. I am the district literacy coach for Zone 2. Could you hear me?
And I am Andrea. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I am district literacy support for Zone 1.
All right. And we are going to be presenting. Let me pull up this slide. We're going to be presenting teaching guided reading remotely. Here we go. The purpose of this training is to give teachers ideas on how to provide small groups and one-on-one instruction remotely via a digital platform.
Tara, really quickly, sorry, do you mind to hit that hide right at the bottom of your screen there? And then,
sorry about that.
Do you know how to turn on closed captions as well?
Okay.
Yep. You just have to click the CC. Yep.
All right.
Oh, right to the left of that. Yep, there you go.
Here we go. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, again, so anyhow, this is to teach you how to use a digital platform. Once you play around with the resources and different platforms, the possibilities are endless. We've seen a lot of people using lots of different things and getting very, very creative. I know I've been doing it, just started doing it when NTI started, and the more I've done it, the more I've gotten better at it. So just give it a try, and the more you do it, you will get better at it too.
So like Tara said, today we're going to be walking you through some ways that you can teach guided reading to your students during this NTI time. And you can do that with pre-recorded lessons as well as live lessons. And we'll walk you through that this morning. When you're doing these lessons, you want to make sure that you include a new book introduction with a comprehension focus, read with prompting and discussion. And of course, the read with prompting and discussion will look differently with the pre-recorded lesson, but we'll walk you through that today as well. You also want to make sure you include a word work activity as well as a writing prompter activity that goes along with the book.
Okay. Oh, I also wanted to mention that we do have 2 members from our team. Other district literacy coaches are in the chat. So if we don't get to your questions, they will. So go ahead and ask away in the chat. So anyhow, the first thing you need before you can do anything is you need access to books. So how to access the digital books. First, you're going to follow this link to set up an account. And so it takes you over to Footprints and the literacy footprints. So you'll set up an account right down here. If you already have one, you can just click on the account. Make sure you check your junk mail because mine went to my junk mail. So make sure you check there. So, excuse me, I'm sorry. Once you are in here, you click on Read Books. And it gives you access to, it looks like 216 titles, levels A through Q. So you've got levels from pre-A all the way up to the fluent level of books. And you can see up here that some of the books have these cameras. I'll show you what that gives you. But once you pick out a book, once you pick out a level, you'll pick the book out. You see you have access to the book. It just looks like a regular book. It's great. And so I was talking about that little camera. Some of the books have that camera. And if they have that, then you have access to a book introduction, guided writing, and also some word work activities. So it just depends on the book and if they have that. If not, we also have some resources that Andrea will tell you about later on. So that is how you can get the books. Oh, also, I've had a lot of questions about how to be able to see your students and see the books while you're on Google Meet, because it's been a little trickier. So I realized that if you download the Chrome extension Dualist right over here, and I've got a link to it, it'll show you how to add on the book. You can add that on and play around with it because you can split the screen. And so if you see at the bottom, I've got one screen, it's got the book, and the other screen, that's got the students. Or the students. So that's a really good resource right there to be able to see your students and see the book at the same time.
Yeah, and that's been awesome. I've been able to use that here lately. The good thing about pre-recording your lesson is that you can record your entire lesson and send it to a group of students. In your classroom, you may have had some students reading level J in the purple group. So you can just send the link to all the students in the purple group and they can have their guided reading lesson for that day. I use Screencastify and I use the digital text that Tara just walked you through, as well as Google Slides from our pre-recorded lessons. And if you've never done anything like this before, there's several things that you need to take into consideration because you're presenting as if the students are right there in front of you at the kidney table. So you have to remember to give lots of praise and smile and just be very articulate and explicit with your directions so that the students can be successful independently without you being there. Also, when you're pre-recording your lessons, you want to make sure that you tell the students to pause every once in a while so that they can gather the materials that they may need, or they may need more time to read the book, so you'll have to remind them to press pause. The good thing with Screencastify is that if you make a mistake during your recording, you just pause for a second and repeat that phrase. And when you're finished with your lesson, you can go back and edit and cut out what you didn't want so that you don't have to re-record the whole video again. And also, you have the option to hide your face if you want your face in the video, or you can be in the screen if you want your face there. When you're doing your new book introduction, make sure that you are a little bit overly supportive. You want to anticipate where they may struggle and mention that in your video because, again, you want them to be as successful independently as possible. We're going to show you a very short video of a new book introduction of a pre-recorded lesson, as well as what it would look like as the student is reading, and then how you can do a discussion at the end. If you would, please click on the new book introduction title for the video.
Here we go. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I meant to turn my mic on and I put myself out of the video. Sorry about that. I was just going to let you know that I'm clicking on it right now. Sorry. New book introduction, that's what I'm looking at?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
We do all three at the same time, one after the other.
Sorry about that.
You're fine.
Okay, for pickles. In this story, Danny and Pickles do not want to go outside and play. They just want to sit in the house and watch TV. Read to find out what Danny and Pickles do to have fun. And so here's Danny and Pickles sitting watching television. Here's that long word, television. Can you say that? Good. And they are going to put on a play. So right now they're writing the script. And Danny says that he wants to be a knight. That word knight is a silent K. Knight. Okay. So we have to read to find out if Danny and Pickles find something else that's fun that they want to do.
You said move on to the next one?
Yes.
Okay.
I couldn't hear anything.
Yeah, it should be hopefully playing
You can
through
skip
the stream.
the middle one.
Skip the middle one?
Yeah, go on to the last one.
Okay, cool. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Here you go.
Okay,
Hopefully
you
you'll
may
hear
now
it this
begin
time.
reading. Push pause if you need more time for each page. Now, go ahead and record who the most important character was, what they did, and why they did that. After you complete that for chapter 1, go ahead and start reading chapter 2. So that sounds like it's so much fun putting on a play. I bet Pickles was a great dragon. Look at your table that you created during your reading. Read who you chose for chapter 1, what they did and why. Read who you chose for chapter 2, what they did and why. And read who you chose for chapter 3, what they did and why during this time.
Okay. Back to you guys.
Thank you.
Andrew.
Oh, thank you. We don't have to show the next video, but it's just showing you how you can introduce your comprehension strategy when you're live with your student.
All right, and then for the last video under live, what I did is I did a live lesson with my nephew. And so what's nice about doing a live lesson is just the obvious that you can be able to prompt them as they need it. You can give them a book introduction. If you know your student very well, you can really feed them for the information of the book beforehand. So you want to click on that link, you can see what that looks like. Or you can click on the picture.
Yep.
So you can see what that video looks like.
Here we go. And there we go.
The principal came inside the...
Notice something. Go back and fix it. Let's do a slow check on that word inside. Ready? Inside.
Into.
Oh, go back and reread it. Good job.
The principal came into the classroom.
So you can see, and you're going to be there right on the spot to help out students if you can have a live meeting. And again, that Dual Les extension really helps out so you can see what they're doing. And if you want to talk about
and this is just a discussion after your reading. The student has already read the book, and it's just showing you the pro that you can have during a live lesson. You can actually talk to the student and have a discussion. In this video, the student has already read the book, and we are discussing a retell of the book using the 5-finger retell. And you can click on the picture.
Okay. All right, let me go click on that one. Oh, you're welcome. Here we go. And
me.
Oh, whoops. Meant to go full screen.
Use your thumb. Put your thumb up. Who are the characters in the story?
Ricky and Buster and the librarian.
Good. And the next one is the setting.
So the same took place at the library.
Good. And the last one?
The problem?
What was the problem?
So, Buster was too loud, and the librarian said that he had to be quiet, so she said that he'll have to take him outside.
Yeah. So how'd that make Buster feel?
Sad.
So you can see of course, the pros of having that loud lesson. You can have that conversation with the student after the reading and during the reading.
So some of the materials you need for when you're introducing a book is students can have their dry erase board, paper and pencil, a chalkboard. My nephew even used a magnet doodle because that's what he had. Teachers, there's lots of, they're making more and more options, but there's the Pioneer Valley digital books. Rigby also has offered up their digital books for free during NTI, but you cannot use it in Chrome. LLI through Fountain System Canal also has available books, but you have to have an existing LLI account. Capstone Interactive has books available, and so do the Mary Ruth books, which are a favorite of Reading Recovery. You also want to have the Next Step Forward and Guided Reading book and your comprehension cards if it's available. If not, then it's in the back of the Guided Reading book and the Next Step Forward and Guided Reading book.
So for word work, there's many different ways that you can provide word work instruction to your students remotely. With a pre-recorded lesson, I use Google Slides. I just put them into my pre-recorded video, and I give specific directions and tell the students exactly what they need to go gather so that they can do the word work activity. If you want to click on the table, the analogy table picture.
Sure thing.
Here's a short video of how you can include word studies and analogy in your pre-recorded lesson. Now we will begin word study. Go ahead and get some paper and a pencil and write what you see on the screen in your notebook. All right, good job. I have the word car on the left side and the word boat on the right. When I hear the word car, I hear the R. When I hear the word boat, I hear the O. So I'm going to say some words. And if you hear the R like in car, I want you to write the word underneath the word car in your notebook. If the word sounds like it has the O, like the word boat, I want you to write it underneath the word boat in your notebook. Okay? If you need more time, just press pause on your screen. Sharp. Hard. Coach. Check it. Were you right? Now I want you to read all the words underneath of the word car. Sharp. Now let's read the words underneath of boat. Coach. Floating. Moan. Great job. If you did not spell the words correctly, just go back and fix it. Okay? Great job. So that's how you can use Google Slides to do word work. You can also, if you want the student to manipulate the screen and actually do the word work on the screen, you can pre-record your lesson, but create a Google slide and share the link to individual students so that they can do the word work and then send it back to you for feedback. This is an example of making a big word. And the student would just open up the slide and click on the audio button to hear the word, and they would just slide the letters into the boxes to make the word. And then to check themselves, they would just click on the red click here button, and there's a Screencastify video that I've uploaded where they can watch step-by-step on how to do that and how they can be successful with that. You can also do picture sorts with Google Slides that the students can manipulate the same way they listen to the audio. they click and drag the picture under the correct medial sound. And then again, they can click here to check themselves to see if they're correct. You can do this with then activities. We've seen lots of things so creative using the
Andrew, you're breaking
they
up
showed us how to do these. Sorry.
Are you
Kara, can
okay?
you pop your screen back up?
Okay, sorry about that. It's just hard to hear. Sorry. Yeah. And then what?
That's okay.
What do you want me to go down to make a big word?
Bishop actually do these to do that.
My phone, my computer's going. What did you say? I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, you don't have to click that. But I was mentioning that Casey was the one that originally showed us how to do these slides. And yes. I noticed on Twitter she had an interview with Dr. Polio recently about all her great things that she's been doing to teach her students lately during this guy. So great job, Casey.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that. I'll have to find it and watch it. Okay, so then word work, you can also use Jamboards, which are my favorite. So if you wouldn't mind clicking on the video, it's a short little video on Jamboards. It might be under a new word or analogy.
Sure thing.
I'm going to click one of those.
Is analogy okay?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, here we go.
Yeah. Listen, spat.
It's underneath chat.
Very good. What comes first? For spat.
S.
Uh-huh.
P.
Mm-hmm.
A.
Mm-hmm.
T.
Okay, next word is snake. Say it slowly if you're ready. Snake. Where would that go under?
Sake.
Very good. What comes first in snake?
S.
Mm-hmm.
A.
Say it slow. It's ready. Snake.
N.
Yes. Then comes that.
A.
Yes. Then comes that.
K.
Mm-hmm. And then the
E.
Excellent. Next word.
You can stop it right there.
Okay.
Okay, so you can see Jamboard's a more interactive activity and you can use it. You can be interactive with the slides also. I have a preference for that, especially when you're doing Google Meets. Jamboards are great because you can create them. They can move around. It's something that it's in your waffle right here. So you can make a Jamboard. You can add analogy charts and you can write on it. You can add pictures to it. You can make letters and be able to move the letters around with the Post-it notes. You can write on it, like I said, and you can do a retelling if you're doing some writing. There's just lots of different opportunities to do with Jamboards. Make a story map, lots and lots of opportunities to do with Jamboards. So I just really like it. So I wanted to share it with everybody. And so some of the materials you need for word work are Next Step Forward and Guided Reading Book, a whiteboard, magnetic letters. Students, an optional material they could have is they could bring their own letters if you don't, or they can use the ones that you provide with the slides or the Jamboard. And then if they don't have magnetic letters, they can use game pieces or they can make their own with paper, dry erase board, paper and pencil, a chalkboard, and Magnadoodle.
Yeah, and the great thing about word work is that you can't, not only do you use it now during this virtual time, but you can also use these during independent practice when we get back into the classroom. For writing, just for the sake of time, we don't have to show the video, but for writing, again, you just want to make sure that you're very explicit with your directions and what you want the students to do and remind them to go gather the materials that they may need for that lesson.
And same thing with when you're doing a live lesson. I did it on Jamboard, and if you can share it with the student, they could write it, or you can write it for them. I'll show you an example. You could even send it to them. They could write it and they could send it right back to you. That's what I did with my nephew. I'll show you when I get to the slide right over here. We filled out the top parts together, and then he filled out the bottom part. I sent it to him. He sent it back to me after he was finished. So you can see how easy it was to use that with writing. So there's lots of different ways that I was able to give him feedback. There's just lots of ways you can be creative with during NTI process.
Mm-hmm. And with pre-recorded lessons, since you can't give that immediate feedback, what you could do is just have the parent take a picture of the completed writing and maybe send it to you digitally via email or text message or even Class Dojo so that you can look at it and provide the student with feedback.
And again, materials, paper, writing utensil, index cards, Post-it notes, virtual whiteboards, whatever they can get their hands on to write with.
If you are ready to dive into these remote lessons, or if you've already started and maybe you need a little bit more support, feel free to always reach out to your zone coach. They're listed here for you. Even if you need us to vet one of your videos before you send it out to your students, we can do that as well. Our team has finally finished our Google site. It's a live document and we're constantly adding things to it. But here we have guided reading lessons from pre-A all the way to fluent, level S and Q. And then we also have read alouds that are separated by primary and intermediate. And those read alouds are tied to comprehension strategies and standards. So you have access to those as well. You can use this site as a tool for you to look at videos to give you ideas on how you create your own. You can actually use the links and send them to your students so that they can have their daily lessons. I know I've used it with my son and it's really helpful.
One other thing is that we just recently added was on the word study piece, we have links with templates and how-to charts on here. So you can click on there and have exactly how to make the different slides for word study. So there's an example of the one for analogy charts with templates and everything like that for you. So it's a good resource.
Also, Jane Richardson and Michelle Dufresne have office hours where they do webinars regarding teaching guided reading remotely. You go to the link and there's different times where they have webinars, and there's also places where you can watch past recorded webinars as well.
I would highly recommend going back, if you're planning on using these digital books, go back and watch the one from April 7th, because it gives you a little bit more detail of how to put the books in different students' bags and assign books to them. So it's a good resource.
Yeah, and again, we just gave you the bare minimal of how you can start teaching students guided reading remotely. But again, the possibilities are endless. So you can be creative and create those lessons for your students.
And that is all. Thank you so much for attending our session on guided reading remotely.
Well, ladies, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for the awesome material this week.
Thank you.
For those of you watching, just remember that you can find this information. If you go to the virtual learning schedule under 1030 right there, you can see teaching guided reading remotely, and you can click on their names and find these resources. So thank you all so much. I'm trying to look at the chat real quick to see if we had any questions. I don't see anything. It looks like Deanna Ford was in there taking care of everything. So again, thank you all. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
You
Bye.
too. Thanks. All right, everybody, it is 10:58, and we are super excited to have you with us. If you want to find any of this stuff, again, go to jcps.me/NTI, click on the teacher toolkit, and go to the digital learning schedule. You can see everything we have coming up the rest of the day. This has been a super popular session every day this week. It's innovative digital leadership strategy for NTI. This time we have two different principals, along with our digital innovation leader, Heather Worrell. So we have Ben Pinnock from Wilt Elementary, and we have Danielle Randall from Semple Elementary that'll be joining us. If you want to continue to follow along and learn with us, you can follow us on Twitter at JCPSDI, that stands for Digital Innovation, and you can tweet your awesome NTI and instructional strategies to hashtag JCPSDigIn. If you click on that, we have another JCPS Dig In chat coming up. I don't see it. That's our elementary folks that went this past week, but we have some awesome middle school school digital innovation leaders, along with, I believe, Dr. Reynolds is going to be our special guest this week. So that's coming up on Monday at 8 o'clock, and we'll be talking about some more NTI awesomeness. So I'm going to turn it over. It's 10:59 to our digital innovation lead, Heather Worrell, as she takes us into our next session with our Rockstar Principals. Hi, Heather.
Good morning, Matt, and hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We're so excited to be back for another episode of Innovative Digital Leadership, and we have two remarkable Zone 2 principals that are going to be sharing in just a second. But first, I'd like to screen share and tell you a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. So, Matt, let me know when this looks good. I'm also going to turn on my captions. Okay, how are we doing, man?
You just need to click. There you go. Yep, you're good.
All right. So in JCPS, we believe that digital transformations happen when digital agility is modeled from the top. And that starts with our district leaders who do a great job of leveraging digital tools to create digital workflow and systems to help lead the work at the district level. And then, of course, our principals and how they are able to leverage digital tools to lead their staffs. So we're really excited because the two principals that we have brought on today have been selected by their assistant superintendents to demonstrate some of the ways that they are leveraging digital tools to lead their teams. And then our goal is through this model that our teachers, especially those who maybe lack confidence with technology, will have experiences with it through their principals' leadership, and also learning from the LMSs and STCs and SDILs. But our end game in this strategy, this digital agility strategy, is that through this approach, that our students are the beneficiaries and that our teachers are more comfortable integrating technology into the classroom so students can create and innovate. So a lot of people, one of the silver linings of this NTI closure period is a lot of people have actually had time to experiment with technology and try to integrate it into their instructional design like never before. So this week we've been featuring principals who have created an awesome kind of NTI digital leadership strategy. We're going to ask them these 4 questions. So we're going to ask Ben and Danelle these 4 questions here in a minute. What systems have you created to support your strategy? And we're going to see some of that from them. And what lessons have you learned during this time? This is perhaps the question that I'm most excited about. Where are you heading as we ramp up for the next school year? How will what you and your team have learned during this time impact your vision and strategy for next year? And then, of course, it's Teacher Appreciation Week. So we want to take some time to really shout out the teachers who have been what we call NTI stars. So we started the week with these 3 principals, and they shared all kinds of innovative ways that they've been leveraging digital tools to lead their schools during the closure and beyond, and all kinds of great insights about the future of ESS and the future of the signature backpack item and how we can use technology to strengthen culture. So if you missed that episode, make sure to check it out. Then we heard from these 2 principals who shared a lot of their systems and their one-stop shop to lead their staff during NTI. And then this middle school dream team. And they talked a lot about building community and how Shalonda Foster from Western Middle School for the Arts, she talked about how she feels more closely connected to her parents and stakeholders than ever before through the NTI closure and the process that they created using technology at her school. And then yesterday, Tanya Arnold and Stacey Rowan, a lot about the future of what school will look like as we move back into our buildings next school year. Very powerful episode. Be sure to check it out if you missed it, which leads us to today. So we have Ben and Danelle. Danelle, am I saying your name correctly?
It's Danielle.
Danielle, I was so close. I knew it was not Danielle. So Matt, you didn't know that's Danielle. So Ben
Sorry.
and Danielle.
That's okay. I'm used to it, I promise.
Okay, Danielle, I knew I was close, but wasn't quite sure. So they're going to be talking about their strategy. So I am going to stop screen sharing and move back. And so since Danielle, I did it. Yeah,
you did
Danielle, I see your beautiful face. I'm going to let you go first. Would you please share with us your strategy and help answer some of those questions for our viewers?
Sure. Thank you all for having me. I was super excited and kind of surprised, like, oh, okay, great. So I have to kind of start backwards. You're going to have to kind of walk me back through the questions. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I first want to start out with giving a shout out to our teachers, not just simple teachers, but teachers in JCPS. It is amazing to me the work that has been created in such a short amount of time. I know that unfortunately the pandemic hit and has hit a lot of homes and families, and our everyone is suffering in so many different ways. But the work, the silver lining is all the learning that has happened in the struggle of this pandemic. So my teachers, JCPS teachers, it's just been amazing. It's been amazing. One of the things I have to absolutely start out by saying is my STC, Megan Crabb, and one of my third grade teachers, Brittany Owens, has been phenomenal. Our page, we have received a lot of positive feedback from parents, just the streamlining of the page and how teachers work together within the school to kind of design their page to make all of the pages look the same. So it made it easy, whether you had a parent in fourth grade, whether you had a student in fourth grade or kindergarten, to navigate through our page. We all tried to streamline it. One of the things that this has also done is pushed my teachers to really become Google savvy. It was that thing that we were working on, but this just kind of pushed everybody into it, and to see how creative they have been, it's been remarkable. I'm so proud of them. So Heather, help me. The first question that was on there.
So you talked about some of the systems that you guys created. It sounds like that your team created a Google site to really help guide and communicate with parents. And I also want to shout out Paige Hartstern. Dr. Hartstern's here, and she gave you and Ben a big shout out. And she's very proud of your work. So she's in the chat. Matt, what else do we see over there in the chat? I saw a Wilt teacher that popped in.
Let me switch over and look really quickly. Michael Terry, great leadership at Simple and Wilt. Stephen Durham and Russ Hockenberry and Kathleen Receiver from our digital innovation team are giving you guys some love as well. And Christina
King is talking about Mr. Pinnock has been an amazing leader during NTI. So keep your comments coming.
Go Ben.
Yeah. So good stuff. So we talked about your site that you built, and that was a Google site, it sounded like.
Yes.
Okay.
And the site, like I said, was really streamlined to support our parents navigating through this process. The first couple of weeks, that was what everything was spent on, helping our parents navigate through that process. Students became the teachers because they were kind of used to using the format, or the platform, but parents were kind of struggling. And again, I think that because our teachers did work so hard to streamline everything, it made it easier for our parents to navigate. The thing that I've loved the most is the ability to meet with my teachers and my parents and my students. We've created parent meetings that we have on certain days of the week where the parents just join us to be able to ask questions. So that has been something we've been able to continue and actually have more contact with parents. When we were in the building, we would try to do a parent meeting, but people are busy on the go, where having this platform, parents are logging in from their phone. Parents are logging in if they're on break at work. And I think it's brought our families closer and them feeling a little bit more at ease because they've been able to hear from us on a consistent basis to kind of ease some of their fears. This has been new for all of us, especially if you have little ones at home. It has been, the struggle is real. So we've also been able as a school to have vertical meetings as we are trying to move toward, this is the time of the year where you are trying to close out one school year only to think about starting up another. And even though things are uncertain, we have been able to have really good team planning meetings and vertical meetings during this time. And the platform has just made it that much easier.
So the question is, you and your leadership team, as you prepare to kind of ramp up for next school year, what will you take with you? What will become part of your strategy moving into the next year?
Well, definitely, I feel as the leader, it has pushed me to develop my skills on using the Google platform. I know that there's a lot of, I missed the opportunity to go through the training, the classes with Kathleen. But I've definitely leaned on her in more ways than one during this whole time. She is a freaking freak of nature. She is amazing. She's amazing. And we love you, Kathleen, for everything that you have done for Zone 2. But it has pushed me to kind of think about how I want to develop our page for teachers to submit things and for us to have meetings in a different way. Right. And, teachers, I think, have seen how beneficial it is for having kids submit work where you are becoming paperless. It's been easier. Teachers have talked about the strength of giving feedback, providing feedback on student work, and you can do it in the comfort of your couch, and you're not having to pack all these papers around. The fact that they've been able to connect with kids at different times and you're able to go live with that kid and have a conference. We've moved into doing our digital backpacks and being able to, this year we had backpack buddies. So every person, every adult in the building had a 5th grade student who they supported through their backpack, just kind of touching base. And this platform has allowed us to conference with the kid and work them through to be ready for their 5th grade defense. So that has been another great way. I think teachers it's been eye-opening for them to be able to see the work that kids can actually do. Yes. And allowing them to create and allowing them to show their different learning styles during this time. It's been amazing. During my closing conferences, I've been asking teachers, what are some of the things that you're taking from this NTI process that you're absolutely going to move to next year? The number one thing has been teachers talking about being able to work directly with a small group of kids and use Screencastify to record yourself. So other small group they have you too. Yes. So every small group will still have your instruction because teachers have learned how to record themselves and record lessons. Sure. My ECE teachers have talked about their digital point sheets that they've used for students and families and how easy it has been to graph data when tracking certain students to support them on their next move. I mean, it's been great. It's been great.
I love it. So one of the things our team always talks about is working smarter, not harder. And so when you record those videos and then you can use them to differentiate, you are also giving students the power of pause. And we talk about the power of pause and rewind. And now some kids need to rewind you 20 times to get it. And then some kids can move on to the next video. So the personalization, and we're talking a lot about blended learning. So I'm so excited to hear your takeaways, and it just fires me up for the future.
We're ready.
Thanks, Danielle. So we're going to come back to you at the end to get some kind of final thoughts after we listen to Ben. But Ben, I'm going to move over. Real quick, Matt, do you see anything in the chat that you want to share with Ben and Danielle?
There is so much love for Mr. Pinnock in this chat. It's crazy. You have a huge fan club in here. It's like half your school's in the chat saying how much they love you. So
and Danielle, Michael Terry and Paige Hartstern and several people are commenting on the idea of backpack buddies and just some of the other comments that you made as well, and about backpack mentoring and just how you've been able to leverage those digital tools. So this is a very enthusiastic chat. And I love it. So Ben, we're going to turn it over to you. And I haven't gotten to work with you in the past, it seems like. So I'm excited to learn.
Well, I don't know if you're going to learn anything from me, but I appreciate you putting this together. I know with scheduling everybody, that's a tall task, and just the amount of resources that your team has provided has been a benefit to me, has been a benefit to my staff. Also, quickly want to say thank you for putting Danielle and me together in the same room. We're actually neighbors. She doesn't live too far from me, and when I see her in the neighborhood, she always turns the other way. Now she's forced to sit here with me, so I told her I was going to give her a hard time. But
I have nothing but love for you, Ben.
But a lot of things Danielle has said will ring true with what we've done. What I did was put together a slide show. So if it's okay, I'm going to share my screen.
I would love for you to talk us through your slides. That's great. And while you're setting that up, your teachers, let's just give some of your teachers a shout out. Amber
Rechtenwald.
Yeah, she's here, and she says is bringing your staff closer together. There's Betty Vanoy. She said you've done an awesome job leading. So lots of love in the chat.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think through what I'm going to share, several teachers' names, I can't do justice to everybody who has stepped up so tremendously, but hopefully this will kind of help point in that direction of what we've done. So one of the things that I like to do, I like quotes. And this is a quote that I think rings true to the way I have approached and our school has approached. It says, mere change is not growth. Growth is the synthesis of change and continuity. And when there is no where there is no continuity, there is no growth. So one of the things that before, immediately once we moved into this NTI phase, something that I wanted to really hone in on is what are some things that we're doing well. And I think these three things really stood out to me is first, we have a very strong community at Wilt Elementary, our staff, students, parents. That is something that I think exists and that we can capitalize on through this period. The second thing is our teachers really rest and know the standards. That started well before I was principal. When Kim Kent was principal, she established that culture early, and it has been maintained, I hope, in the time that I've been there. But that's something that was key in the way we think about instruction. And I have a very gritty staff. Our motto is where effort becomes excellence. So when it comes to challenges, they step up. When it comes to ensuring that people are participating and attendance, they step up. Top to bottom, Ms. Kane, our attendance clerk, she's been so helpful, and Ms. Dehart, Mr. Averly, our FRC, Ms. Dwyer from the district has helped us, Ms. Dusky, our counselor. And so those are things that exist that we needed to hold on to and make sure they're effective as we move forward. Another thing is I asked, what can we improve? Heather, I've heard you use the term digital agility many times, and I think that was something that we really wanted to improve on. And also balancing our grasp of standards along with student choice. So with that, I created this to kind of help shape where I exist daily. This is the work that I do. This is kind of my cycle that I'm in, and then my teachers are embedded within this. And basically what I'll do is I'll talk specifically about each one of these as I move forward in the slides. So first thing, very early on, we created a Wilt Google site and sent this out to our teachers. We sent it out to parents and students so that they would have access to it. This is kind of our centralized hub where we have NTI links, and I'll show a little bit more of that. Our staff directory is even on there. This is where we do announcements to make sure that we're updating this to let parents and students know what's going on. And you can see kind of some images from there. I've done morning meeting consistently on Mondays and Fridays, posted those up to the site, and they're accessible throughout this time period. These are some screenshots from the actual Wilt NTI site. And the thing that I have just been so impressed with is how our teachers have grown in Google Classroom. We we dabbled in it before, and some staff members were very strong and used it regularly. But this whole process, people have stepped up and done such a tremendous job. These are just some samples of a fifth grade classroom using multiple websites to engage their students. Our third grade screenshot here at the bottom. This was what third grade did on May the 7th. Our special area team, Ms. Walker, has been so helpful across the board, STC and technology teacher. And I know she's engaged with much of the stuff that's going on with technology. She worked with our special area teachers, Ms. Travis, Ms. Heim, Mr. Hopper. We put together our own special area choice board for enrichment activities for our students. And that's been something that's been helpful to go along with what the teachers have done in their classroom. So with that, and I'll just you all mentioned earlier how Google has been so helpful, and the power of pause conversation is something that is happening with our teachers. That conversation of, would this be more beneficial if I use a form here, a Google slide or a Google Doc? And all these have been used to assign work, provide quick and instant feedback, show participation, show engagement. Teachers are accessing their creative license and learning and asking questions of each other. And the cool thing too is they're giving praise to one another, talking about, Ms. Gillick pointed out how Ms. Brooks was helpful to her the other day. Just that consistent community that exists. Teachers have, obviously been creating more lessons. We've created a virtual field day through the use of Google tools, and also the Wildcats of the Week recognizing our students who are doing a phenomenal job during NTI. That's something that, again, already existed while we were in school. So maintaining that community was very important, moving away from school into our homes. I've utilized School Messenger as well. And, I try to send out 2 to 3 school messages a week to keep the parents engaged. The importance of email and the timing of email, the intentionality of it, I think has been very important in how I put messages out, because there's just messages coming from every direction. So the ones that I send out, I try to do it with intention. The cool thing too is that Ms. Williams, my assistant principal, and I are co-teachers in Teachers Google Classrooms. And it's so cool to see students respond and communicate with our teachers. Asking for help and then getting that help back and seeing a student respond with a thank you and I miss you. Those things are important. And it's just, kindergarten through 5th grade. It's just really helpful at this time as we're away from our kids. And I know our teachers are working very hard to maintain that community feel. Yes.
And Tasha Bradley, who's a 3rd grade teacher at your school, she says our entire staff is working hard and we are all growing professionally during this NTI time. She's very proud of her school. And Danielle, you have a simple teacher, Brittany Owens, said, so proud of my admin and colleagues for being all in during this challenging time. She says your students are shining. So just a couple of comments in the feed I wanted you guys to hear. So keep going, Ben. This is great stuff. Thank you.
I'm done. I'm gonna try to wrap this up. And then obviously with Google Meet and Zoom, those have been used for class check-ins, guided reading groups, and so it's been so neat. I've been able to jump into some of our kindergarten groups where even our instructional assistants, who I equate them with teachers, they step up. They've taken on groups and help their teachers out. Miss Martin and Miss McCauley, Miss Kwok have helped out, and specifically our teachers, Miss Harlow, Miss Grine, and Miss Brooks, who have maintained. It's just been so neat to see our kindergarten kids. I'm going to give Kathleen a shout out. She came last year to do K-Can too, to plant that seed. And really this NTI experience has been like miracle grow for my staff, I think.
Oh my God.
And,
we need to use that, trademark it. NTI has been like miracle grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
But, Ms. Dusky has led counseling sessions. Our mental health counselor, we just hired her before, Ms. Wilhite, before we got out. She's been so helpful in stepping up and offering support. virtual field trips. Miss Walker, again, she went to Farmington, and the first time we had over 100 people show up, 3rd through 5th graders, with parents and others that were involved in the Google Meet. The backpack defenses, we did the same thing with mentors this year. Yesterday at about 4 o'clock, we did, about 8 in Miss Stella's class, and I had to hold it together because we had kindergarten teachers and 3rd grade teachers with their students. Gabe and Carly, they were making everybody cry. So I told them they didn't pass their backpack defense because if they left everybody, I don't know how they were going to make it. But no, in all sincerity, they did so awesome. And I've really enjoyed probably the experience with the backpack defenses just about as much as anything else, because more adults, based on how we've been able to schedule them, have been able to be brought in, and with the mentoring piece, it's just been very powerful. And of course, faculty meetings, those are fun too. One thing that's been helpful to me to just, the use of analytics. So like when we built our website, one of the things that I wanted to mark was how much is it being accessed. And we've seen a decline, but it's not a bad thing. It's a decline because now that our teachers are comfortable with Google Classroom, more people are going straight, more students and parents are going straight to the classroom. But just in 1 month, we've had over 1,415 users of our website, 22,000 page views. So that shows that what we do is being accessed. And I wanted to measure that. It doesn't necessarily mean that, people are just hanging out there all day, but it's been accessed, it's been used. And also Bitly, from things like the yellow cards with transportation. Again, Ms. Kane has done an awesome job with that. But I sent that out through a Bitly, and you can see that we had 400 clicks on it. So just that use, and she's pretty much got most of our transportation complete. Yearbook order, PTA nominations, same kind of stuff. And then also YouTube and Twitter. I put my morning meeting on YouTube, and just to try to maintain some normalcy there in the use of Twitter. So to wrap it up, takeaways and move aheads. I think this has helped us increase and maintain our community, our standards and grit. What I like, and I've tried to convey this to my staff, is that PD, professional development, is not a session. Professional development is ongoing, and this has been on demand. And they have all stepped up, encouraged one another, praised each other through the process, talked about recording their lessons, and then also with even conferencing with parents. This has opened up our eyes. My assistant principal pointed that out. Teachers have pointed that out to say there's really no excuse why we can't offer and reach out to our parents. We have great parent response when it comes to parent-teacher conferences, but we can meet with them if we truly want to. We can do that anytime. Been blown away by our primary K through 2 and how our students have just utilized the classroom and been so responsive. I know parents have been very instrumental with that. And the backpack defense is already mentioned. We're planning for summer extensions and enrichments, continue with that choice and flexibility. And then, one thing that I've been thinking about is, even though this is going about as well as I think it possibly can, we're thinking about, once we get back together, some community building that we'll have to do once we're in the presence of each other again. And then the continued utilization of the communication cycle. So I'll stop talking now.
You're great, Ben.
Yeah, I was trying to take pictures and screenshots of everything and try to tweet some of it out. That was just a very systematic approach that I hadn't seen this week. So shout out to you, and I love that you're speaking our lingo.
Heather, he's an overachiever. Even when we're running in the neighborhood, Ben always has to try to run faster. I'm like, Ben, this is not a competition. We know you're great. We know.
That was so good, Ben. And I have so many questions, and I'd love to kind of pick your brain and break some of that down further. But great takeaways. Danielle, what do you like now that you've seen that, or have you had any other thoughts as we close out the episode for today?
Yeah, Ben, it's funny because although we didn't talk about what we were sharing, it was so many things that he mentioned that I was like, oh gosh, we've learned that too, especially with the parent piece. My counselor, my AP, my behavior team, mental health support, just all those things that as much as we're trying to get the kids to make sure we're learning, we also know we are in a very fragile time, and our parents and families have needed additional support. So the meets have also allowed us to connect to our families in a different way to make sure everybody's good. Just like Ben said, doing the morning meetings is the same with our morning groups have still continued because we've been able to have that small time with some kids who still just need it, and even some parents, adults, we've needed it too. He made me think about our staff meetings. They've been really fun. My counselor and AP have worked really hard, teachers, just trying to get through it together. So every Friday there's been some type of theme. We've had a theme on our staff meetings, and just to get the adults to kind of breathe. I mean, I think that through this, we are absolutely going to be better for it. But it's just encouraging and supporting one another, throughout the process.
Well, you guys are both remarkable, and I can totally see why Paige and Michael nominated you guys to come on today. And I'm just so proud to work with so many passionate and talented school leaders. And thanks so much for sharing today.
One more shout out real quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
I'm so impressed too with our ECE teachers. I don't think I mentioned them specifically, and hearing Danielle talk, it clicked with me. Just they're, with all the questions with ECE, how do we do ECE during this time?
Yes.
They just plunged ahead. They met with kids, from our ECE implementation coach, Ms. Cruz, to our classroom teachers, to our resource folks, Ms. King, Ms. Wilson, Scholler, King, Butler, Powell. They're all doing an awesome job. And I can list my whole staff. I'm thankful to be at Wilt. And I know Danielle feels the same way about her staff. And I do want to mention them too.
Yeah, our ECE leadership at the district level, I've been so impressed with their support that they've provided as well. So there's so many silver linings and everyone coming together. And I love, it's been Miracle Grow for everyone's digital agility. I'm definitely going to take that with me. You guys are rock stars. Thanks so much for being here. We'll be back on Monday at 11 with Sarah Hitchings, who's the principal at Wagner. So we have a couple more episodes for you next week featuring principals. So until then, we'll see you later. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Happy Teacher Appreciation Week, everybody.
Bye, friends.
Thank you all so much. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
All righty, everybody. We are coming up on our last show before our lunch break today. Remember, if you need to find any of these resources, you can go to jcps.me/NTI and go to the Teacher Toolkit to click on the digital learning schedule. Coming up, our last session, we have Harmonizing ELA and Creativity with Dominique, Carrie, and Jenny. And I'm going to let you all take it away. That way we can maximize your time. So thank you all for joining us. Happy Friday.
Well, I think it's still morning. Good morning, JCPS. I hope everyone's enjoying this kind of dreary Friday. I'm going to introduce myself first because I'm going to be the voice behind the slides today. My name's Jenny Stiff. I'm the AIC in the Gifted Office. So thanks for being here, and I'm going to let Carrie and Dominique take over.
Good morning. I'm Dominique Pleasant-Moore. I am the ELA K-5 lead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Carrie Gray, and I'm currently the AIC at Carrick.
And I need some help because I can't find my screen share icon that I normally see. I'm sorry.
When you scroll to the top right, is it not there for you?
Okay.
Put your cursor up top right.
Let me try again. I'm so sorry. I've been doing this and I don't know. No, I don't see it. Do I need to go?
Try to refresh really quickly. That might be the issue. Yeah. Welcome back.
Okay. Thanks. No, you guys, I am at a loss today. This is the first time this has happened.
Okay, I can do it. I'm going to pull it up really quick.
Okay.
My computer's moving slow today, so.
I'm surprised we still have a good connection, honestly. It's been pouring rain at my house, so I'm shocked that something hasn't dropped yet. So.
Yes, thank you.
Let's knock on a bunch of wood so that doesn't happen.
All right, can you see me?
We sure can.
All right, let me get captions on and then we'll roll.
Awesome.
Thanks for being flexible with me, Carrie.
That's okay.
Teamwork.
Teamwork, that's right. All right, you ready? We're ready.
Yep, good to go.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with our norms today. And I just want you all to know that we have a few things we expect while you're participating in our chat today. And the first one is we want you to be present, ask questions if you're confused, or add comments if you have a connection or want to share some ideas. That's good for the group. We want you obviously to participate. We want you to be open to new ideas. What we're talking about today is a really cool topic of combining content area and creativity. So we're excited, and we hope if you hear one of our ideas that you share with others today. And now I'm going to give it over to Dominique to go over our objectives.
Thanks. We have our objectives for today. First, we're going to identify the 4 areas of creativity. And Jenny's going to go in deeper detail about those 4 areas. We're going to apply the 4 areas of creativity to our ELA standards. And we're going to create lessons for students combining those ELA standards and creativity.
Thanks so much, Dominique. So now we want to throw a question out to you. So if you're online, if you will, please participate with us in the chat, because what we want to know is what's the first thing that you think of when you hear the word creativity. So the first thing that pops in your head, if you would, just type it in the chat and we'll begin this conversation about what creativity is. So what do you think of creativity? What's the first thing that comes to mind? And I'm going to give a little minute because I know we have a little bit of the delay here.
Carrie, and I've got the chat open, so if I see anything, I'll definitely let you know.
Yeah, it looks like your question just finally went through on there. So,
all right.
Student choice, art, music. These are things that are popping up in chat about what creativity is. I think a lot of us go straight to art and thinking about the ways artists are creative. So Jenny's going to walk us through the definition that actually our district uses when identifying gifted and talented students. So Jenny, will you take us through what creativity means?
Sure. I love that many of you are answering music. A lot of times when we think of creativity, most of us think artistically. But I want you to keep in mind that some of our most creative thinkers are mathematical and scientists running through experiments. And that's just a different type of creative thinking. So in the gifted office, we define creativity as having these 4 components, or making sure you're meeting these 4 components. The first one is fluency, and that's the student's ability to just generate a lot of ideas. The next one is flexibility, and that's the ability to come up with different types of ideas. And so I always like to use a concrete example here. If you were asked, what could you list all of the ways you could use a paperclip? Obviously, you could start brainstorming that in your head. And most students, when I ask them this question, list mostly tools. That's not very flexible. That's fluent. They can come up with tons of ideas on how the paperclip is a tool, but very rarely do we see them coming up with something besides a tool, maybe a piece of artwork, or they're going to give it as a gift to someone else, or it's going to bring people together somehow. So that would be an example of flexible thinking. And then, of course, originality is the one when most people think of creative thinking, they think of originality. It's this one-of-a-kind, innovative idea. And we use the top 2 parts, fluency and flexibility, everyone, to generate that one-of-a-kind idea. The hopes are, if you're fluent and flexible enough in your classroom with your kids, then that one-of-a-kind idea shows up. originality. And then, of course, the last one is an English teacher's dream come true, and that's elaboration. And that's just adding more, explaining, embellishing all of those good skills, showing and not telling in your writing. Making sure you're supporting arguments in science, elaborating with examples and evidence, things like that. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Carrie to continue.
So we wanted to just have Jenny define that so we know what creativity is in terms of the work we're going to combine with ELA today. So why include creativity in our instruction? And really, we're focused on ELA today, but creativity can be connected with any content you teach. And we know that creativity increases student engagement, and it increases the level of rigor in any assignment that you are giving to students. Any task that you create that has any one of those 4 components of creativity in it will automatically increase the level of thinking and promote critical thinking. We know that it encourages students to be risk takers and have that growth mindset that they can try things and do things they've never thought of before. It fosters motivation. If you're thinking about that gifted and talented student in your classroom and they have these fun activities that are really making them think outside of the box, they're going to be more motivated to learn. And really that goes for any student in the classroom, not just our gifted and talented kiddos. It promotes achievement across content areas. So we know that creativity can touch every single content area that we teach, and it will enhance the achievement for all of our students. And it increases the creative thinking and problem solving. So as Jenny said, we can connect this to math and science. We need creative problem solvers right now, today, to help us solve this pandemic. So we really want to reinforce this problem solving idea and creative thinking idea by including these skills in our instruction. So how does creativity really connect to ELA? So we're going to give you some specifics, and Dominique is going to share with you some ideas.
All right, thanks, Carrie. How do our ELA standards and creativity, how are they perfect companions? Well, ELA offers an abundance of opportunities for students to challenge ideas, problem solve, and think critically. It opens up for students to be able to have conversations, debates. ELA naturally offers activities that are conducive to creative thinking, webbing, brainstorming, visualizing, considering different points of view, symbolizing, and many more. Along with creative thinking, allows students to find multiple correct answers. And I love this piece the most. Students understanding that there may not be that one answer. And I think that gives students opportunity to feel like it's a safe place to share their thinking. So I really, really love that. It encourages different thinking when there is more than one answer. Offers an endless amount of creative, literary, and informational text that can be used.
I love that you stressed, Dominique, in multiple answers, because from the gifted perspective, the older gifted kids, especially general intellectual kids who are just super brainy, they're very hard fixed on right and wrong. And I really think we need to do a better job for all kids, but specifically creatively gifted kids and our general intellectual kids, and teaching them that there are gray answers, and that there are lots of right answers, and then so to solve problems.
Yeah, Jenny, that's why I love that piece the most. It gives every kid an opportunity to express themselves and share their ideas in a safe place.
It's great.
All right, thanks so much, ladies. And we're going to move into a framework that will help you kind of think of you can think of it as a planning tool, rather. So what we have done is we've taken a standard, an ELA standard at every grade level, not every grade level, let me take that back, first, third, and fifth today, to model for you how you can take any standard, any piece of literature, and work through the 4 skills of creativity to create instruction that matches both the creativity skill and the standard. So for this first model here, we took a first grade standard. We're looking at RL 1.3, where we're describing characters and setting major events and stories in order to make meaning of the story. So the example here is a bad case of stripes. And if you have the PowerPoint, we've linked a YouTube video with the story so you can see it. And thinking about fluency, and if you'll remember, Jenny went back to fluency just being that ability to brainstorm lots of ideas. So with this book and this standard, thinking about ways students could brainstorm a list of sound effects that occur when Camilla changes colors. So if you've never heard the story before, it's about a character named Camilla Cream. And she loves lima beans so much, but she's so worried about how people are going to think of her because, you know, lima beans are not delicious food, but she loves them anyway. So she goes through these series of changes where she becomes the colors around her environment and the things that are being said around her environment. So if students are able to quickly brainstorm a list of sound effects that would occur when Camilla changes colors, then they're more likely to recall all of those events that have happened in the story as she's changed. And then they can use the text to support their ideas. And you can imagine in a first grade class, the amount of sounds they can come up with and how much fun that task would be for them. So automatic engagement. For flexibility, what we thought of where students could work with a partner to list the ways that the story could have been different if Camilla had enjoyed changing colors. So in the story, it's very concerning to Camilla that she's changing colors and she wants to find a way to make it stop. So can students think flexibly and thinking about how the story would be different if Camilla liked that? So we're going back to character development as well as the key details in the story to help them think of this. And then again, using evidence from the story to support their changes. Originality, so that one-of-a-kind idea. Can a student work with a partner to create a new solution to help Camilla stop changing that does not involve lima beans? So I gave away the end of the story here, but lima beans saved the day. But can students come up with an original idea to support helping Camilla stop changing colors that would not involve lima beans? And then they can go back and refer to the story and explain how the new solution would maybe change the meaning of that story. And then elaboration, which is always the easiest for me to think of, is an idea would be that students could pretend to be Camilla Cream. So being the thing or the person and thinking about how Camilla would feel. What would her thoughts be? What is she going to do? And just elaborating on her character. And students could include illustrations, quotation marks, speech bubbles, so really getting them to include dialogue, creating a writing piece, a storyboard, or a book where they can add Camilla's feelings, thoughts, and actions to the story. So these are just a couple of ideas. Of course, the ideas are endless, but just to give you an example of how all of the skills of creativity can align to the standard in any story, really, that you choose. So I'm going to move on, and Jenny's going to share with you a third grade example.
And I really want to reiterate what Carrie is saying. I hope you're noticing how she brings these creative strategies back to the ELA standard. You will notice, if you are not aware, students can run crazy with creativity. So you want to make sure that, I want to stress that you keep it contextually. So if it's a realistic fiction story, then we certainly wouldn't want to have the embellished piece or the elaboration piece be sci-fi. We want the genres to match. We want them to stay in the context of the story. Now, with Camilla Cream's example, there was lots of magic and fun things. So, of course, you would allow your students that same autonomy to incorporate those strategies. And so my third grade example is very similar. We're just going to break it down and use this framework with you to show you how to connect the standard. I took a different standard. I took
3.1, making inferences. And I again included dog breath. And you can, this is a text I got from the curriculum maps. And this story is about a dog named Halitosis. And she has very bad breath. And the kids have to solve this problem. Otherwise, the parents are going to make them get rid of the dog. And so it's a really cute story. And you can see under the fluency that we thought it would be a great idea for students to brainstorm all the positive ways that bad breath could affect you. We tend to think of everything as negative. So that's really getting them to step out and be a little more fluent in that area. And then again, we would want them to bring it back to the text. That's very important. They have to support the inferences that they're making from the story. One of the examples that I think is kind of silly, but grandma passes out from the dog breath. And one of the things the kid might come up with is maybe grandma's mean. They don't really want grandma there. It's not implied in the story, but that might be a way to look at it. And again, in doing so, as Carrie mentioned, this helps the children remember all of the other steps and parts of the story and support those inferencing skills. Flexibility, we thought students could brainstorm or list how the story might change if Hallie didn't have bad breath, or if the children were able to cure it. That would certainly change the trajectory of the story, and then the inferences would certainly be different. And so they would have to think about how they would have to reread the inferencing skills and use them differently. Originality is, to me, as Carrie said, elaboration comes easy to her. I feel like originality and elaboration are probably the easiest as well. It's just coming up with a new idea. So anytime you have them rewrite the ending, add a scene, any of those things, they're doing originality and elaboration. And I will let you look at my examples and go back to this at a time when you are in your thoughtful place. The last thing I want to add before I turn it over to Dominique in a fifth grade example is that we really want you to make sure that some of these skills are pre-taught. You would certainly never start with this skill unless you're planning on using it as a diagnostic, which I think you could certainly do. If I started out and having them identify a theme, as Dominique's going to model, if they can do that on the very first day through a diagnostic choice board activity, then right there, that's your gifted kid, or that's the kid who will need enrichment. And we want teachers using diagnostics, and it doesn't always have to be in the test form. And so I'm going to let Dominique share a fifth grade example. And I hope you guys are enjoying this presentation today.
Dominique, are you on mute?
I think you're muted, Dominique.
Sorry, I keep muting because my dog is losing his mind today. Before I share my example, I want to say that this was the first time I had ever worked with these tasks. And so I had to kind of bounce my ideas off of Jenny and Carrie. And leaning into them really, really made it easier to come up with my ideas for each task. And they also kept me very focused on my ELA standard. So when you're starting out working on the areas of creativity, having a group or team or someone with you to bounce ideas off of, it makes it super easy to do. It seems like it might be a little hard, but once you start working with someone else and bouncing those ideas, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. This makes sense, and it makes it easier. So I have a fifth grade example, and I'm using the standard 5.2, which is theme. I use the text Pink and Say. And so in Fluency, students will brainstorm a list of themes that would fit for this story and a list of themes that would not fit for this story. So students will reference the text and support their ideas. I love that it's getting kids to think deeper, think outside of the box. And like Jenny said, these are tasks that you wouldn't start with on day one, but almost like an assessment, summative assessment to see, have they grasped the idea of theme? And this fluency task really, really gets them thinking. With the flexibility, students will work with a partner to brainstorm all the ways the story might change if Pink had been injured instead of Say. So it also makes them to think about their perspective from a point of view from someone else. How might these changes affect the theme if we switch the characters, the character that's being injured? Students will provide references to the text to support these changes in the theme. And with my originality, they're going to work with a partner and rewrite the part of the story when the soldiers come to Momo Bay's house. Would this original new part of the story affect the theme? Once again, it's getting them to think deeper, not surface, just finding the theme and saying, okay, this is the theme, but being creative and thinking, how does different things change the theme, affect the theme? And with my elaboration, Pink and Say had a unique friendship. Elaborate a final scene that would continue the theme of friendship. And students will cite implicit or explicit evidence from the text to support ideas.
Thanks so much for sharing. And as Dominique has said, this takes students to a whole deeper level of thinking. So automatically, I hope you can see how the rigor is increasing with the activities that are combined with creativity. So we were thinking about how can you incorporate this kind of work through your NTI instruction? And so, choice boards have been so popular. We, of course, thought it would be an easy place to put an activity or a task right on a choice board. So we've linked here just how you might reword these tasks to fit on a choice board. And you're welcome to take these ideas if you like them or create your own, of course. But keeping in mind that you wouldn't want to put every single skill of creativity on there. So you might pick one or two on the choice board and see which one students appreciate doing. So that is there for a resource for you. And we have also created a tool that looks like the tool we've been using, where you can make a copy and plug in your standard and go ahead and start brainstorming your ideas for fluency, flexibility, originality, and elaboration. We've included the definitions of each up at the top to help you remember what students are expected to do with each skill and creativity. So that's there as a planner for you. And then lastly, I'll let Jenny speak to a Padlet that was created to help as well.
And I just want to add one more point of view from the gifted perspective. Creativity is a fairly new area that JCPS is grappling with and learning to identify. It is not new to the state nor to gifted education, but it is definitely something that's been sort of new to us. And so as we move forward, I want you to know that if you're a 4th or 5th grade teacher or up into middle and high school, embedding these strategies into an ELA classroom would count as services for your creatively gifted students. I oftentimes get teachers telling me how nervous they are because they don't know how to service these kids. And I want you to see through Carrie and Dominique and my example how easy it is to, with a little practice and some conversation with friends in a PLC, that this is just a simple notation in your lesson plans. This would count as a service for your creatively gifted kids. And it would also be a great thing to use with young children who are in primary talent pool, because you really might see some of those creative thinkers coming out in our K1 and 2 kids. And then that would help you move forward with identification year, 3rd grade. Now, back to just ELA and creativity. We have created a Padlet for you. We just thought we'd use and model another source of technology. Padlet use open to JCPS. I don't have this open to the public, so it's a safe place if you want some feedback from one of the 3 of us. We've got ELA specialists, gifted specialists, so we've got lots of information and knowledge to share, and I'm sure you're going to bring in awesome new knowledge to share with us. So that collaborative piece, as Dominique has spoken of, is very important to making sure you're kind of working together. And so if you click Carrie for us on the Padlet, will you take, oh, you're already there, thanks. So you can see we've linked our stories. We've linked a really great presentation by Sir Ken Robinson. He is a proponent of education, and he has a fabulous TED Talk on creativity. I would really encourage you to listen to that if you're interested in this topic. And so we hope to see some teachers posting or reaching out to us, because we'd love to help and support you more with combining your content area and creativity.
Thanks, Jenny. I also, linked the Sir Ken Robinson's YouTube video from his TED Talk right here. It was one of the first things I saw when getting into the creativity work, and it was very moving. So highly suggest that you take a look at that. And that's all we have today. Please follow us on Twitter, throw out any questions to us. On Twitter, you can email any of us through JCPS email. We're obviously here to support anybody who would like to brainstorm and try to tackle this a little bit. I will say I've had a couple of teachers at Carrick venture out into this world, so we're hoping to get back some good student work samples soon. But thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your rainy day.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much. We appreciate it. A lot of appreciation for the work you guys are doing in the chat. So thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks.
Hope you all have a great weekend.
You too.
You too.
Bye. All right, everybody tuning in, thank you so much for watching this morning. Remember, all of this stuff is on the Teacher Toolkit, jcps.me/NTI. You can find the resources they've used on the virtual learning schedule. We are going to take a short 30-minute break for lunch, but when we come back, you will have Kyle Chandler moderating the stream, and we will have Ryan New and Suzanne Kramer starting us off with how can I use questions to build interdisciplinary choice boards. Thank you so much for tuning in this morning. Stay dry, stay healthy, and to all you mothers out there, happy Mother's Day. Thank you.